I know your boss, so I expect a discount. Has anyone ever worked for a company where the company name includes what seems to be someone's first name? Our family surname doubles as a first name. Most first names, surnames have an S on the end, such as Andrews, Collins, Edwards, etc., but occasionally you get the ones without the S, such as psychic John Edward. We owned a breakdown towing service in Australia. A lot of people decided that they should get free towing or reduced rates. Our company name was our surname with an S followed by towing service. Let's use Philip, not our real name. Alright, so the company name would be Philip's Towing Service, I guess. Practically every week, I would get a phone call from someone saying that they were a friend of Philip's, and he had told them they could have a free tow, or a $10 tow. In Sydney, most basic towing starts around $60 for a tow around a corner. My response would be, which member of the Phillips family, sir? It was always a male. They would say, what do you mean? I know Philip. Philip is a surname, sir, and there are 4 members of the family who work in the business. Who are you friends with, sir? Click. Obviously, these people didn't care if the person who organised the tow got fired for not getting paid or not charging enough. They were entitled to use the service for free or for their decided amounts. When I was working as a receptionist, I had someone ring one day and tell me that they were my boss's doctor. I called my boss and said that there was someone on the phone who said he was the boss's doctor, and the boss told me to put the call through. It turned out to be someone who was selling timeshares, who had worked out a way of getting past a receptionist to their target. After that, I asked the name so I could confirm who was actually calling. So you're telling me seriously that people would call up your business randomly, and because it happens to have the name Philip in the name of the business, they would say, oh yeah, I know a Philip. And he's told me that I can get a lovely discount off your towing service. Really? That sort of stuff actually goes on? Honestly, I reckon you know what I should do for like a cool video, a one-off? I should go and spend a day at like a cool service or somewhere where there are just normally loads of entitled customers. Maybe at a towing service like this. Maybe Philip's Towing Service. And just see what it's really like working in a place like this where, you know, they have to deal with like stupid customers each and every day. You know what? Drop a like on this video, yeah? If this video gets 10,000 likes, I know it's a lot of likes, but 10,000, I will seriously consider making a video like that and putting, you know, a lot of money into it, making like a proper production and making a video like that. And, you know, me going off into the big old world and putting myself in a position of someone who has to deal with entitled people every day. Do you want to see it? Let me know. Now for our second post. Finally encountered a Karen and gave her what she deserved. Just got back from dinner where we had a run-in with a Karen. Staying in Port Douglas in North Queensland, and it is packed after months of COVID quietness. The Indian was quiet, so we decided to give them our cash and chose one of 2 tables out on the path under a big umbrella. It started to rain, so we moved the 2 of the 4 seats out of the rain, eating our starters when Karen arrived. We were trying to eat, but we could hear Karen's daughter, also a Karen, complaining that some of their seats were getting wet, and then she says something along the lines of, "You'd think these people behind us would move to make more room for us." In a really loud voice, the mother Karen said, "Some people have no self-awareness." I turned around and said, "If you're gonna say something about the table beside you, you possibly should be more discreet." She floored us all by saying, "I said it loud so I'd hope you would hear, but I didn't want to interrupt you as you were eating." What the actual F? I said, if you wanted us to move, all you needed to do was ask. We were sat where we were, at our table for 4, to get out of the rain. There's far more polite ways to ask than be blatantly rude. She was gobsmacked. Maybe she hasn't ever been called out. Her husband just sat there silently. Daughter Karen, the same. Then, the rest of the equally obnoxious family turned up, and they sat there having loud, childish clapping games. Talk about not being self-aware. We asked for takeaway containers and left. That she was an English expat Karen just made it worse, or better. Typical bleached blonde, gold jewellery, white linen and sandals. 2 daughters the same. The perfect Port D/UK expat stereotypes. The dad was just as bad. They all enjoyed his story of sitting at airports with his legs stretched out in front of him so that the other idiots had to step over them. Sorry for the rant. OP? Sorry, why does the Karen being English make it better or worse? Have you got something against English people? Because if you do, I'm angry at that. Overall, yeah, pretty great family. You have to say, right? Obnoxious, entitled, Selfish? Unaware? Ignorant, perhaps. A few words you could use to describe not just me, but this family as well. Yeah, what is it? What is wrong with English people, man? Come on, tell me. I think we're right, you know? But seriously, if you've got a problem, comment down below, like the video. Let's move on to the next story. Now moving on to our final story, he didn't show his badge. It was 1968, and I was known for having trained my German Shepherd extremely well. On this particular day, I had one of the neighbourhood boys come to my home to help me out with yard work. He was a very nice young man, and polite to the nth degree. After finishing the raking, I had him come in for something to eat and drink. As we sat and talked about the next day's work, a knock came at the door. I answered to see two men, who demanded, "We came to pick up Earl for questioning." To take Earl to the police station for questioning without showing some kind of warrant was a red flag in my book. Earl was only 15, and I refused by saying I will bring Earl home and have his mother bring him there. They tried to push their way in, but my dog interceded with a nasty growl and showed her teeth. They backed off and left. This is not the end of the story. I brought Earl home and told his mother what happened. She told me Earl had delivered papers and one of the clients accused him of breaking into her home. This had happened during the time Earl was in school, and his mum verified it with the teachers after this woman had made this accusation. The woman insisted though it was Earl, and she had a friend who was on the police force and would have him put in jail. I went home after leaving Earl's home and decided to walk over to see my mum, who lived 2 streets away. As I crossed one road, a man hastily came up to me and said, "You are coming with me," as he grabbed my arm. Now mind you, I never went many places alone without my dog, who was only a short distance from me. I yelled for my dog to get him and she latched onto his arm, seriously biting him, and he let go. He then drew a gun and attempted to shoot my dog. I grabbed her up and ran with her to my mother's house as quickly as I could. The man left in his car. Later, I found out this man was a detective and needed stitches from the bite. He was deemed at fault as he didn't show his badge. Lucky us. Not really sure how you're the lucky one in this situation, OP. I mean, it's literally his job to show his badge. That's like the first level common sense of being an officer or a detective or whatever in a position of power. You got to be ready to show your badge. You got to be ready to show some form of credentials so that people can actually identify you and say, yeah, you seem credible, man. You work as a detective. How could he not show his badge there? It's like 101 of being a detective, that you get ready to show your badge and say your name. I'm detective blank. Surely. Am I being silly there? I don't think so. So yeah, I guess overall you were kind of lucky, but in many ways it was the detective's fault for not saying who he really was, not properly identifying himself. And anyway, Earl, what a lovely name for a 15-year-old, by the way, I must say. If any of you are called Earl, let me know. What a name. Earl had a good alibi. He was in school, so it can't possibly have been him. So realistically, none of this was lucky. You know what was lucky though? And I give you this. Having a dog that can attack people. What a weapon to have up your sleeve. If I could walk around with a snake that would attack people, if you don't know guys, I do have a snake. I'm going to insert some footage right here of me with Marty. Marty, you need to be sensible now, because you're now going behind my back. Okay, now he's on my head. Oh, what a lovely bandana this is. He just does what he wants, this lad. Always has done, always will. He's quite old now, actually. How old is he? 15-ish? And yeah, I mean, he just does what he wants. Let me put him on my neck so he's a bit more comfortable. There we go. There we go. Get your body around there, lad. And there we go. This is him. The young Mart. Well, he's quite old now, really, but I do apologise for this, by the way. Imagine me, right, going on a walk with this boy, and someone comes up to me and says, "You know what, mate, you're under arrest." And I just say, "You know what, no, Marty, attack." And he just goes and eats him. It'd be pretty nuts, wouldn't it? What a superpower that is to have an animal that will protect you. I'm not going to lie. One of the benefits of having a dog, I guess. Anyway, not luck, more just skill, I would say, in choosing a great pet. A customer followed me to my car, accusing me of stealing my unbagged groceries. I'm in Aldi after a long day of numerous events. One being working overnight and essentially having been awake for more than 24 hours, and I'm filling up a cart with needed items for the house. I'm at the register and realise that the bag of tortilla chips I grabbed is primarily smashed. I talked to the cashier about him scanning that bag and then allowing me to head back into the very small aisle section of the store to get a lesser crunched bag. He agrees. I pay for my groceries and my daughter immediately takes my receipts. Before I head back into the aisle section of the store, I ask the cashier if I need to confirm with him that I got the bag before heading out of the store, and he says no, it will be fine. I grab my lesser crunch bag of chips. I make my way across the front end and through an empty register with my cart full of groceries and my 2 young children. I do not bother the cashier I had, nor do I bother the other one at another register. I was told it was fine to just leave, so I just left. I'm outside of the store, and the wind is picking up pretty good. There's a storm coming. It's about 3 o'clock, and it's dark out, and the parking lot lights are on. This is going to be a wicked downpour. I get my kids and my shopping cart to my car. I put my kids in first, and then start putting my groceries into the reusable bags that I'd left in my car. For those not familiar with Audi, they charge you for bags, or you can bring your own, or walk out with no bags, or use boxes. It's all up to you. I'm finishing up, and a woman, another customer, pops up out of what seems like nowhere. "I will gladly help you pay for those groceries that you just put in your car," she says, "but you need to come back inside with me right now. They are going to press charges. I'm trying to help you. They are reviewing the camera footage. They are calling the police. They know you stole those groceries." She goes on saying stuff of this nature for a few minutes, and I'm completely shocked at what's coming out of her mouth. I'm floored. I did what? So I say to her that I paid for my groceries, but she insists that she watched me walk through an empty register with my full cart and walked out of the store. And well, that's because at that moment that she tuned into my shopping trip, I did do just what she said. I tell her again that I paid for my groceries, and she asked me for my receipts, which I cannot produce because I assume my daughter must have let it go on accident when the major gust started, and the wind took it along with her mask that she had been wearing. Yes, I feel awful for littering a mask via the gusting wind. She will not stop accusing me long enough for me to get more than "the guy with the spider tattoo" or "I already paid for them" out of my mouth. I finally snap at her and say if you could be quiet for just a few minutes, I could explain. She tells me that I don't need to explain. She saw me and they are going to press charges, and she's just trying to help me. I'm getting angry, and my umbrella that I had taken out to use to return my shopping cart to the store started malfunctioning. I don't know if she thought I was waving at her, but she starts saying, "Okay, I believe you. I will go inside and tell them you didn't steal them. You can leave." I'm furious at this point, and drenched, and also really concerned that the police actually were called. So I get in my car and drive me and my kids to a parking spot closer to the front of the store. I take my children out of their seats and carry them both into the store during the downpour to confirm with the cashier that he remembered me, and that he remembered the chip agreement. He said very loudly, "Yes." To which I responded, "This lady," she made it back inside right after me, "said that you guys were watching the camera and think I stole them. I was just checking that you remember me." The customer then starts to say, "I didn't say," and then her voice trails off. Or I block her out, I don't know. I start towards the exit for the second time. My daughter says to me, "Mummy, you got me all wet. Why?" My response, because sometimes people just can't mind their own business. Update, I found my receipt during my ride home. My daughter had put it in her little purse she had had with her in the grocery store before we had walked outside in the wind. Well, Karen, I've just got one question for you. Why is that any of your business? I mean, you don't know this person. They're just another customer, like you, and you don't know what's happened before you've seen them. I mean, come on. It's not that hard to, think/consider that obviously there have been events that have happened before you've gone into the store and seen them with your own eyes. It's not that hard to comprehend that, yes, maybe there has been an agreement with the cashier to just go and swap an item out. I mean, that happens quite a lot of the time, right? You're queuing to get rid of or check out all your items from a store, then you realize that one of them is, a little bit defect, or you want a different version or something, and you just say to them, "Can I go and swap it?" And they're like, "Yeah, you know what, mate, that's absolutely fine." So I don't know why you got your neck involved, to be honest, Karen. It was a waste of time. That's all I can say. And also, why is she making up a load of rubbish? Like, I'm just trying to help you. They're calling the police. We all know that's not true. We all know you're just getting involved because you want to be. And you're nosy. Do you not think, guys? If you disagree with me, comment down below. Do you reckon Karen was actually being a good person? I don't. I think she was just getting her head involved when it didn't really need to be. What do you think, though? Comment down below. I'm interested. Now moving on to our second story. Dad thinks he's entitled to tell you when to stop eating. My dad has severe control issues around food. He must always eat more or have a bigger portion than everyone else. He sometimes takes smaller portions to be self-righteous, but then goes and eats a second meal or course that no one else is allowed to eat. He also tried to say when you should stop eating, which always has to be before him, even if he's already eaten and you haven't. There is nothing worse than when you've skipped lunch and you found out that dad had a big afternoon snack, because that means dinner is going to suck butts. His controlling behaviour has given me food issues, where I hoard food and binge because I'm scared he's going to take my food away. I'm also overweight and fat. I've recently moved out, and one of the big perks is I have a healthier relationship with food. I binge less and eat less in general, but I'm mostly not consumed by thoughts of food 24/7 like I used to be. This Christmas was actually the first Christmas I didn't binge chocolate before and after dinner. I ate reasonable amounts, but it's still Christmas. Everyone except Dad was telling me how they think I've lost weight. Yay! I left feeling good about myself. Enter my dad. He called my home today to fix my sink. As he was leaving, he sat me down and went through all of the food I ate at Christmas and told me how much less of each item I should have eaten. I tell him to stop, as him controlling my food will trigger me for a binging episode. He continues. I explain again. He tells me though my binging is only hurting me. I tell him I know, but he needs to stop. I also mention how freaking creepy it is for him to watch me eat and count what I eat during Christmas. He tells me that that is as right as my father, and anytime we have meals together, he's going to be watching and counting. Other things he has done are 1. Look through my trash to see what I'm eating in my own home that he does not live in. 2. Question what I've ate every day. And 3. Offer to order my groceries online for me so I don't have to go to shops during COVID. He then edited my shopping list to meet his standards. However, I am slowly gaining more control over food in my life, and I feel so free. Jesus, what a horrible person. Do you reckon this dad ever thinks, like, stops for 1 second, he thinks to himself, I wonder why my child has such, severe eating disorders, like needing to binge, being overweight. I wonder why that could be. Could it possibly be because of me? No, it can't be that. It must be other people, because I'm being nice to my child. I'm looking out for everything that OP eats, just to make sure they don't get too fat. I don't know. It's just like a strange one. Surely these people have to look at themselves at some point and think, maybe my actions are actually causing these dramatic ramifications. Who knows? I just think this dad is stupid. Like, how controlling, how weird of a person to be to even try and control your kid's food in the first place. Let alone when they say to you, please stop, you are the reason that I have trouble with my food and eating in general. Then just carry on and say, no, it's my responsibility as your father. Strange bloke. Yeah, pretty much I would just say, get away from this man as quickly as you can, OP. Who cares if he's your father or not? Get him out of your life. Now moving on to our final story. My cousin sued her own sister. My great-grandaunt died of COVID in the beginning of 2020. It's been a huge blow for the entire family, especially her 2 daughters. The drama between them came to a head when her will was read out. She left both of her daughters 1.5 acres each of land that she owned out in Louisiana, but she left her house to her oldest daughter. That house is a family staple. It was the house my great-grandaunt lived in when she moved from Louisiana to Washington to be with someone she loved. It was where she celebrated Christmas Eve and Thanksgiving. It made sense that the oldest daughter got the house, since she was already living there to begin with. Not to mention, the younger daughter already had a house, one where she just renovated the basement and put a brand new deck in the front. She didn't need the house at all. But my cousin didn't see it that way, so she felt the need to sue her older sister for the rights to the house. She even got her daughter and her niece to turn against her own sister. Her reasons for wanting the house are pretty selfish in my opinion. Her main take for wanting the house was so that she could rent it out to other people, not even a week before my great-grandaunt died. She said to her face that making money off the house was going to be her plan. Everyone in my family was so angry, to the point where they all announced that they weren't coming to her wedding, and the ones that were coming would be sitting on the groom's side. Her fiancé was actually a nice guy. You may think that that might be a little harsh, but my cousin honestly deserved it. For someone to say that they would claim their mother's house when she dies to her face is nasty. Because of all that backlash she was getting, she ended up dropping the lawsuit and apologised to her sister. On top of that, the wedding was cancelled. I could talk about this for hours, because this situation goes deeper and deeper. I tried to keep it as brief as possible. I just hope that my family gets better after all that's happened. I tell you what, that is a pretty bad thing to do, right? Say to your dying relative that, you know what, even if you don't put your house in my name, this is what I would plan to do with it. I would sell it out, you know? I wouldn't even live in it myself, wouldn't even honor it, just rent it out to random people. And if you put it in my sister's name, I'm going to sue the heck out of her, ruin her life. I don't care about you, great, whatever you are. I mean, I don't even know what your name is. That's how little I care. It just doesn't matter to me. I want to make money off of your land. Pretty crazy thing to say to someone that is dying in literally a week. I also wonder why the wedding was cancelled. I hope it was cancelled because the fiance, the nice guy, realised that he would be marrying a monster, and not that you realised, or whoever this is realised that, yeah, people aren't going to be sitting on my side at the wedding. Let's just give it a bit of time and then they will. I really hope that the fiance was like, you know what, after this entire debacle, you're gone. You're gone, mate. Let me get someone else, because you are not good enough for me, because you are a disgusting human being. Because, let's be honest, to do something like that, you would have to be a pretty disgusting human being. I'm going to visit my husband, not running away from home. I'm currently 24 years old, and I could probably easily pass for anywhere between 15 to 19, depending on my clothes, hair, and makeup. When this happened, I was 20. My husband and I met online while we were both in the military. I was stationed in San Diego, and he was stationed in 3 hours away, 29 Palms, which is about 30 to 45 minutes from Palm Springs. All three of those are in California, for anyone who may not be familiar with the area. We got married, but weren't able to live together unless we wanted to live in between our bases and each drive 1.5 hours one way to work. So we each stayed in our own apartments in our respective cities and just visited each other whenever we got the chance. I didn't have a car. I took the bus and trolley to work. When I went to see him on the weekend that it was my turn to visit him, I would take the train. So one Friday, I get off work and call an Uber, taxi, to take me to the train station. I brought my backpack with my clothes for the weekend to work with me, so that I didn't have to go home first, but I could just go straight to the train station. The Uber driver said, "You have a backpack and are going to the train station. Are you running away from home or something?" "No, I'm going to see my husband for the weekend." "Husband? They let you get married really young here." He was foreign, I think maybe Middle Eastern. "I mean, not really. I'm old enough to be in the military." "Wait, how old are you?" 20. "I honestly thought you were 12. People usually think I'm way younger than I am, but that's definitely the youngest I've ever gotten." Alright guys, let's talk fractions here, you know? I'm a bit of a mathematician myself, so let's delve into the numbers here. 12, yeah, as a percentage of 20 is 60%. Therefore, this driver is thinking that you are 60% of your actual age. That's like saying to a 40-year-old that they look 18, you know? Have I got the maths right there? Someone correct me in the comments, 16 or 18, one of the two. Pretty mad, nonetheless, it is my overall point. To be thought of that you are pretty much half the age that you really are. I've never seen someone that is 20 that looks anywhere near to 12. I mean, 15, 16 maybe, but 12? That's just an insult at that point. I mean, come on. That's a madness. Now moving on to our second story. Kiosk employee mistakes my friend for a predator. I'm 19, he's 21. So I, a 19-year-old female-to-male guy, was hanging out with a couple of friends at one of their apartments. We were all drinking and just having a good time with each other. Around 3 a.m, it was just me, Sam, my 21-year-old male friend, and another guy who was still awake, as everyone else had gotten tired and gone to bed. Sam and the other guy were both hungry, so me and Sam volunteered to walk to a kiosk nearby for some grub. I didn't want anything myself, but I felt like getting some fresh air. When we got to the kiosk, I just kinda walked around aimlessly while Sam went for some snacks first. I noticed that the kiosk employee at the register, who was the only employee there at the moment, was staring at me and Sam. I figured he was probably watching us to make sure we weren't stealing. When we walked up to the counter, however, the employee was looking at us really strangely, furrowing his eyebrows like he was suspecting us of something. When he looked at Sam, he looked sort of angry, and when he looked at me, he seemed more concerned. We paid for our stuff, and just as we were about to leave, the kiosk employee stopped us. This is the conversation that followed. "Wait, you?" "Yeah," I reply. "Can I ask how old you are?" I found that strange that he would ask me this, because I wasn't trying to buy anything age restricted. Yeah, I'm 19. Without missing a beat, the kiosk employee said, Oh, alright, sorry. I just had to ask because I didn't think you were more than 14. I was honestly a bit offended. I know I look young, but really? 14? I just sort of reassured him quietly and then we left. And that's it. Lol. Sorry it's not the most exciting story. Well, I still enjoyed it. See, stories like this, in my opinion, guys, are not as bad. They're not as embarrassing for the person who got someone's age so badly wrong. I mean, in any case, getting your age wrong by 6 years, 20 to 14, is better than the first story, 20 to 12, 8 years. But yeah, I mean, this kiosk employee, look, he was just looking out for you. He was worried that something strange and illegal was going on. So I can't really blame him for that, just doing his job. Not even his job, just, being careful for the general population and for you. So yeah, rather than being insulted, I mean, it is a bit insulting to be called 14 when you're 20. I do understand that. However, see it as a compliment and see it as someone that is just, looking out for general people and making sure that some weird stuff is not going on. Now moving on to our third story. You really think you'd get away with that outfit? So this happened last year when I was 23. I needed to go and get a copy of my high school transcript as my university had somehow misplaced mine. I'm short and small. It was much easier for me to just physically go to the school than wait for it in the mail. I showed up just before school started, and there's high schoolers all loitering around waiting to be let inside. My high school won't let you inside without a teacher's note for before school tutorials or band students. It was hot outside, like 90 plus degrees, so I was in a tank top where you could see my bra straps, scandalous, and probably the shortest denim shorts I own. None of this is within the school's dress code, by the way. So I walk into the school to head to the front office, and this coach, acting as hall monitor pretty much, steps in front of me, stops me, and goes, "Did you really think you could break the dress code so blatantly? You really think you'd get away with that outfit?" I looked right at him and began to just walk around him and said, "Well, seeing as I graduated almost 6 years ago from the school, yeah, I do expect to get away with wearing this outfit. I'm here for business with the school, not to go to school," as I avoided his other attempts to stop me. That particular coach was always a little power hungry when I did go to school here. Wow, I'm not going to lie, that one feels a little bit premature. I wanted to know what was going to happen after that, OP. You've left me hanging there, which is not very nice. I've got to say, I wanted to know, was this guy going to carry on stopping you even though it's pretty clear that you are actually older and you're not a student there anymore? Was he really embarrassed? Did he just, slink off without saying anything? Or did he, be a man and apologize? I wanted to know, but unfortunately we weren't given that information. So I'm going to leave up to you guys to think about what might have happened. Comment down below, what do you reckon might have happened? The way this guy was acting, the way OP has, explained what this guy was like back when she did go to school. How do you think he reacted? I want to know. Let me know in the comments down below. And yeah, I'll heart the best answers. Now for our final post. Female guard confused me for a senior high schooler. This happened last year, so still no COVID-19. A little background to my story. So just recently, our country proposed a new educational program, which basically added more time for you to go to school. Before, we didn't have junior high and senior high, just elementary, high school, then college. But now, after elementary, you have to enter junior high school and senior high school. After the government applied that program, our university too also offered junior high (JHS) and senior high (SHS) services. So instead of only college students present, our university also now accommodates junior high and senior high services. Enough about that though, and on to the story. There is a rule in our university that junior high and senior high students cannot go outside the campus before 11 AM, and in the afternoon they also cannot exit before 3:50 PM. But as a college student, I am free to go in and out whenever I like, assuming I don't have class at that time. So it was a Wednesday, and every Wednesday is wash day. This is important, since the only thing that distinguishes a senior high student and a college student is the design of the uniform. That specific day, I think the senior high school had an early dismissal, since there were so many students lining up or crowding up the main gate, waiting for them to be allowed by the guards to leave. The time was still 10 to 10:30ish. Mind you, teenagers nowadays are so tall and basically look like adults already. I was 23 at the time, but I was quite skinny and kinda average in height and baby-faced, especially when I had a shaven moustache and beard, which I did at the time. So as I approached the main gates, I leaned on the scanner to have my ID scanned so that the automatic doors would open. But a female guard stopped me and said, "You're not allowed to go out yet. It's still 10. I replied, "But I'm a college student. If you step back or I'm going to confiscate your ID and give it to the prefect's office." "But mom, if you look closely, step back or I'm going to confiscate your ID." So apparently she thought I was a senior high school student. I keep saying that I'm a college student, just look at my ID, it states there that I'm a second year BScs computer science student. But she wouldn't listen, or maybe she can't hear, probably because it was quite noisy at the time with all those students talking. So I just gave up, and I was going to go and try the backdoor gate, when all of a sudden I see my teacher on my major subject walking towards the gate, so I ask him to tell the guard to let me out, since I'm not a senior high school student. My teacher says to the guard, "Why didn't you allow this student to go out?" "I am told that we would only allow senior high school students to go out at 11 AM. "But he is not a senior high school student. Look at his ID. I gave the ID finally to the guard and she was embarrassed. "Well, why didn't you say so?" At that point, it was exhausting to argue. Finally, I got out. I know she was only doing her job, but it was still quite annoying since I hadn't had breakfast at that time and I was famished. Ever since then, every morning, whenever she is assigned at the main gates, I see to it that I wave at her and always remind her that I'm not a senior high school student, to the point of being annoying. Well, OP, I would argue that is a little bit uncalled for, if I'm being completely honest. As you say, she literally was just doing her job, and you've told us why she may not have been able to hear you because obviously there are loads of school students around, and obviously doing her job like that, she can't, look at every single person who might be trying to sneak out, you who legitimately could have gone out. She can't be dealing with every single one of those people individually. So I guess maybe at that time, because it was so busy, she was just like, nah, and no one's going out. And to me, I can understand why she would do that, because it would take a lot of time to deal with every person, on their own. And she obviously wouldn't want to do that because, think about it, it'd be horrible. But yeah, I don't know, there's no need to, rub it in her face. Obviously, she realizes she's made a mistake in that situation. She's been embarrassed to her face by one of your teachers, and now you're waving at her every day, saying, yeah, look, it's me, the person whose age you got wrong. There's no real need for that, In my opinion, just my opinion. Maybe other people would say, you know what, she made a mistake there, and yes, she deserves to, own up to it, and well, not own up to it, but, be reminded of it. But that just seems a little bit harsh in my opinion, a little bit unnecessary. Again, guys, let me know what you think down below. Yelled at by customer at work. This happened to me in March of this year, just as the lockdown started and many stores had started having special shopping hours for elderly and high-risk customers. I worked at a grocery store on the overnight stock crew, and my shift ended at the same time the special hours started. I would frequently pick up items I needed at the end of my shift before heading home. On this particular morning, we had finally gotten a shipment of toilet paper and cleaning wipes in. I picked up a 12-pack of the cheapest toilet paper in the store and a canister of Clorox wipes for my mum, who is high risk. I was not wearing my black work polo because I was 7 months pregnant and it didn't fit, so I was allowed to wear a plain black t-shirt instead. I picked up a few food items and headed for the register. I ended up in line behind an older woman. She said very pointedly to the cashier, who is a friend of mine, that we needed to be more strict on the elderly and high-risk guidelines. She looked straight at me as she said it. She said we needed to have a guard at the door to make sure that no one was coming in during the special hours, except those that actually needed to shop at those times. At our store, it was from 7 AM to 8 AM every day. She also said that if the store lets other people in to shop, they should make sure that they don't buy the essentials that other people need, looking at the toilet paper and Clorox wipes in my hands. Now, my co-worker is an elderly woman, and she is not shy. She's a spitfire and she'll tell you what she thinks and doesn't give two dangs about what you think. She looks straight at the woman and says, "There is a limit on essential items. You can't buy 2 packs of toilet paper." The customer had 2 of the biggest packs of toilet paper we sold. We're talking 18 rolls. The woman snapped at her with a, "Fine, whatever, but I'm not coming in here if you're going to keep letting other people in during the special hours. I want to speak to a manager." Bet you guys didn't see that one coming. My co-worker calls the manager on duty, which happens to be my manager on the overnight crew. He comes up and this woman goes off, yelling about how we're letting regular people shop during the special hours, how the cashier was rude and was limiting her, etc. Full on Karen. My manager looks at me and can see that I'm irritated. He looked at the customer and straight up said, "I would like for you to leave." She got angry and asked why she should be the one to leave when she was clearly following the rules of the shopping hours, and I was not. He said, and I'll never forget this for the rest of my life, "This customer you are harassing is my best employee. She just finished working a 9-hour shift to fill these shelves so that you could come in to buy your essentials. She is picking up a few items after her shift. And on top of that, you're harassing a pregnant woman who is considered high risk, and she has as much of a right to shop during these hours as you do. She is exhausted, and she's scared because of the pandemic, but she comes in every night, works extra hours, and busts her butt so people like you can come in and talk down to her. You can leave now, and you're welcome to stay out." And he walked away. She tried to stammer an apology at me and ask about my baby, when I was due, what I was having, etc. when the loss prevention guy showed up to escort her out. I ignored her and picked up one of her packs of toilet paper instead of the 12-pack I had grabbed. I checked out my items and was on my way while the loss prevention guy took her picture and made notes that she was banned from the store for 30 days for harassing an employee. Yeah, I guess the moral of this story, guys, is that you never really know if someone is high risk or not. Just because they're not old, or just because, you know, they're not pregnant, maybe she didn't know you were pregnant, whatever, it doesn't mean that someone's not high risk. Or maybe, as you said, OP, you were buying for someone who is high risk, your mum, you know, who's elderly. So yeah, I guess just don't presume until you really know is the moral of this story. But I kind of get a little bit what this woman was saying. Obviously, this Karen did not go about it in the right way. She should have been way more polite than just going mental at you and the staff. But I get what she was saying, and that it is important to respect these special hours so that elderly people who are high risk, get the stuff that they do need and deserve. It was just unfortunate for her that OP, you'd been working all night stocking the shelves and you were just on your way out, and yeah, she happened to get annoyed at you. But yeah, I kind of see what she was saying. Do you know what I mean, guys? I'm being a little bit, you know, lenient with this woman, but I kind of understand where she was coming from. She's probably tired as well. She's probably scared of going out in the pandemic. But yeah, no need to be overly aggressive in this one is my overall point, I think. Now moving on to our second story. She does work here, lady. She just doesn't get paid. While this is not the typical retail horror story, I thought you might enjoy it here anyway. I'm a retired veteran and have been for more than 20 years, making this story just about 3 decades old. Usual disclaimers for the passage of time and my failing memory, but I'll do my best. Thank you. I'm in civilian government service these days, but back then I was a technical sergeant in the healthcare administration field. I've been assigned to the base hospital's outpatient records office as the non-commissioned officer in charge, not long before these events transpired, and we were short-staffed due to Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm, so we were busy. This was long before the days of electronic medical records. These were good, old-fashioned, coloured folders, chock full of all your appointment notes and test results, all filed on shelves, lots and lots of shelves. What with active duty personnel, their family members, and local retirees and their spouses, there are about 44,000 of them. If you scheduled an appointment more than 24 to 48 hours in advance, we would pull your record the night before and send it to your provider's clinic. Otherwise, you had to come see us yourself to sign out your record before you could be seen. It was a weekday, early to mid-morning I think, and we had a long line of patients at our service window. I was on duty along with 2 to 3 junior enlisted workers and RL, a very nice lady. We were dodging each other in the narrow aisles and pulling records as quickly as we could. It wasn't quick enough for IK though, impatient Karen, who, RL, the records lady, was helping. I was near the window checking a patient's eligibility when the impatient Karen sighed like the air brakes on a bus pulling up to the curb. A moment later, she starts whining. "What is taking so long?" Then, "This is stupid. I can't believe this." And, "What's wrong with her?" Waiting in line is rarely fun, and is much less so when you or your children are sick, so I get it. I stepped up and I told the Karen I'd check on her record and be right with her. I found the records lady in the aisle, looking at the shelves with confused frustration, and I understood the delay. Now, my colleague, the records lady, had suffered a traumatic brain injury some years before, and while she didn't have any major deficits or disabilities, she occasionally had trouble processing numbers. Our records were organised using a terminal digit system, based on the first 2 digits of the last 4 digits of the service member's social security number. This could be challenge enough for the lady if she was in a rush. Being under the pressure of a foul-tempered Karen did not help. I suggested she take a break in the back, found the record, and took it to the service window. "Here you go, Mom. I'm sorry about the wait." "Finally, you need to get rid of that woman. I can't believe she actually gets paid to work here." Each exclamation point, by the way, there was accompanied by an increase in not just volume, but also venom. "I should complain to your commander." I wondered how in the heck this woman could not see and understand the difference between my colleague record lady's uniform and mine. I was wearing BDUs, battle dress uniform, and she was wearing street clothes with an apron. Mine was woodland camo and her apron was white with some red trim, maybe pink too, and a conspicuous red cross smack dab in the middle of it, as in the American Red Cross. So, I hand the impatient Karen her record and say, "I understand your frustration, and again, I'm sorry for the wait. But while she, the records lady, does work here, she's a Red Cross volunteer. She doesn't get paid for helping you. Not one dime. However, I'll forward your concerns to my commander, and I'll send a copy to your husband's commander as well, as a professional courtesy, of course." She went pale, realizing that she may have just gotten her husband into trouble. She drank her big steaming cup of STFU and walked the walk of shame to her appointment without another word. Just as I promised, I wrote up the incident for my commander, who actually contacted the impatient Karen's husband, clued in my first sergeant, and CC'd the hospital patient advocates, just in case. I never heard anything further. Not long after that, I worked with the Red Cross coordinator to find the records lady another volunteer position, one where she wouldn't be subjected to that kind of treatment, something that also better suited her talents. She really was a nice, generous lady, and I didn't want to see her volunteer efforts wasted, thanks to some self-centered Karen's abusiveness. Oh man, I feel so bad with stories like this, because yes, this person technically is an employee, but they're not getting any money. They're volunteering their time just for you to come in, Karen, and just be abusive to them and ultimately really disrespectful and ruin their day when they don't even have to be there. They're literally gaining nothing being there in terms of a monetary value. They're just giving their time to help. Oh, it's such a shame. And yes, Karen didn't know, but that's no excuse, right? You can't just be horrible to an employee. Like in the first story, you can't just be horrible to a customer. You can't just be horrible to an employee. You don't know why they're there or why they're in a certain position. I guess the thing with both these stories is don't presume because, or don't assume because it makes an ass out of you and me. And by you and me, I don't mean you and me. You watching and me speaking. I mean you and me, other people. Yeah, it would never be us, don't worry. Anyway, it's a shame, isn't it? It's just a shame that people act this way, because why not just, go in with a little bit, a bit more kindness and say, I'm really sorry, I am in a rush, but can I get these things because, my kid's sick, I've got to go and do this, I've got to do whatever. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Oh, I just feel bad for this woman. And yes, she has been moved to probably a better position for her because she does not deserve this. But imagine what this would do to your self-esteem, getting abused when you're volunteering. It's not even like you're getting paid and you hate your job, you're volunteering. Oh, it's sad, but I hope she has a better position now is all I can say. One that she at least enjoys more than this rubbish. Cheat on my friend and spend all of her money? Get deported. So my friend, let's call her Coco, was really popular in high school. The type of girl that everyone wanted to be friends with, and nobody wanted to cross. Coco was known to be promiscuous, but by senior year, she seemed to have finally settled down, and was in a stable relationship with a boy. Let's call him Edgar. Edgar immigrated from Ecuador as a child, but was completely Americanized, and I don't even think he spoke Spanish that well, from what I can remember. He was the type of kid that was seen as kinda a bum to most at the school. He was nearing 20 and barely showed up to class sometimes, only to smoke behind the school and hang out with friends. I guess he was on some sort of program to get his diploma before he legally couldn't continue showing up. Regardless of this, he made my friend happy, so even if I didn't think he was Prince Charming, I tolerated him. Coco, on the other hand, was head over heels. She worked every day after school at the local grocery store, and with her hard-earned money, she spoiled the heck out of him. a new Xbox, shoes, taking him out to eat, the whole 9 yards. She kissed the ground he walked on, and I was, of course, skeptical, but again, she was happy and it wasn't my business. Things seemed cool for a while, but when poop hit the fan, it hit with ferocity. 5 months into their relationship, he cheated on her. Not only did he cheat, but the girl he cheated with was freshly 14 years old and a freshman at the same high school. Keep in mind, he's 19 and probably shouldn't even still be at the school. Now, this 14-year-old girl wasn't exactly innocent. She'd had a reputation for a while for sleeping around with older men, and she looked around 17 to 18 years old. Not to take away from the gravity of the situation, but to point out that she was a very willing participant. I just feel it's needed context. Yeah, but she's still a minor. News broke because this girl was bragging to all her friends about sleeping with Edgar, and I guess one of her friends told Coco. I was almost 100% sure that Coco was going to fight this girl. She being 17 at the time, she wouldn't have gotten into the trouble she would have being an adult. To my shock, however, that's not what she did. Coco was obviously devastated. The man she's adored for almost half a year, her first real boyfriend, and the thousands she spent trying to make him happy definitely tore her to pieces inside. Instead of fighting the 14-year-old and trying to socially execute her, however, she played it smart. Here is where the nuclear revenge came in. This 14-year-old knew Edgar was with Coco, and obviously feared Coco and the social power she had at the school. It was clear that she was scared to death of even showing her face once the news broke out, expecting to have to fight Coco or having to attempt to save her social life. What went down, however, was nothing like that. Coco messaged the girl on Instagram saying pretty much this: "Hey, I know what happened between you and Edgar, and I just want you to know I'm really sorry that he took advantage of you like that. I think we should meet up and talk about it. I know it's not your fault." Coco didn't really believe this girl was preyed upon, and I'm sure she was even fuming at her, but it was important to her master plan that the girl took up the victim role. I see where this potentially could be going. They end up meeting, and Coco pretty much showers the girl in affirmation that she is a victim. Edgar is the evil Baphomet child of Satan, and that if she went to the police, that Coco and her whole friend group would stand beside her and care for her. Long story short, the decision between social suicide and a fast pass to the popular group wasn't too hard for this girl to make, and she ended up going to her guidance counsellor the same day. The guidance counsellor listened to what happened and promptly called the police, who pulled Edgar out of class and have him handcuffed outside in a public spectacle. When the ugly truth comes to light, it's worse than anyone could have imagined it. Not only did Edgar and this 14-year-old get it on, they did it in the school bathroom. His mugshot was plastered on the news and everyone was talking about it. After multiple hours of Coco gaslighting this girl and telling her all the right things to say to the police, he was charged. He ended up getting charged with statutory rape on top of another charge because it was on school grounds. He got $50,000 bail, which he wasn't able to pay, and better yet, they were deporting him to Ecuador, the place where he had no remaining family, barely spoke the language, and that's only after he served his 5-year sentence in the US. Throughout the entire trial, Coco pretty much coached the 14-year-old, telling her to say she was scared and felt pressure to do it, when in reality, it was all on her own accord and nothing new to her. She complied with everything Coco said in order to save her own social reputation. She even continued to brag about her sexual endeavours to us, but as long as it wasn't Edgar, we were happy to entertain it. We were young and dumb and living life like we were in an early 2000s teen movie. Looking back, I can tell the girl definitely had some issues with male attention. Regardless, for the rest of our senior year, Coco let the girl tag along with us and treated her really well, even bringing her to senior prom in a loophole for the LGBT students. 3 years later, the girl is seemingly doing great. I see her on social media from time to time, and she's enrolled in college for the full semester. Coco has a new boyfriend she's been living with for over a year now, and Edgar is still in prison awaiting his deportation. Looking back, I realised how messed up the whole situation was. The 14-year-old definitely had some problems in her life, and Coco was definitely manipulative. Sometimes I even feel bad for Edgar, but at the end of the day, she was still 14, so even if she was totally down with it, it's still illegal. I don't think either side was exactly doing the right thing. It's not like Coco actually cared about the 14-year-old like she pretended she did. At least the girl had a nice time for the rest of high school. Coco just wanted to scorn Edgar, and scorn him she did. Nah, you know what? Yeah, you are right. Okay, fair enough. You are right, OP. She did want to scorn Edgar. That is completely legit, but she did it completely legally. And, you know, most importantly, she was outing a nonce. I can't say it any more than that, you know? A 19-year-old was sleeping with a 14-year-old, that's illegal, and he should know way better. Even if the 14-year-old is entertaining it, or even if the 14-year-old is demanding it. Really, it doesn't matter. You're 19, and you're sleeping with a 14-year-old. Yes, you deserve to go to jail. Yes, you deserve to be deported. It's pretty simple. It doesn't even matter what Coco's real, you know, reason for doing all this was. At the end of the day, a paedophile got reported for paedophilia and arrested. That can only ever be a good thing, you know? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter about the other stuff. It really doesn't matter at all. Yeah, like there is a comment down below which I completely agree with. Another way of titling this story is Coco recognizes that her 19-year-old boyfriend has committed statutory rape and helps the victim report it to prevent him from preying on other victims, and then continues to support her afterwards. Like, that is how I'm seeing this. The 14-year-old, doesn't matter what sort of person they are, they're 14. That's the whole point. Yeah, I mean, it's weird. The 14-year-old could do anything. They can do whatever they want. It's still fine. They're 14, and they've been, let's be realistic, they've been victimized by a 19-year-old. Weird. Really weird, but at least this guy's put away now. Great stuff. Now moving on to our next nuclear revenge post. Be a POS all of your life. Have fun getting stranded in a drug cartel city. This revenge was performed by my mum and her epic mind. It all started when I was born. Life was happy, good, and easy. My brother was a good and working person. College dropout, but always very smart, or that's what we thought. My brother went out every night with his friends. Nothing alarming, but very weird. Time passed, and I turned 10 years old. At this point, my brother had a girlfriend, a son, and had already moved out. It was fun until my brother moved back with me and my parents. Poop truly hit the fan there. The first day, we noticed an instant change in both his personality and appearance. You see, he didn't move back in alone. He came with his son and girlfriend. We asked why he came back, and he simply said they had a problem and this was temporary. For his girlfriend, to which I will refer as D, and son, this was true, but he stayed for the rest of the story in our house. When his girlfriend and her son left, she cut contact with both our family and my brother, but she did occasionally ask for money. Don't tag her as bad just now because she had a very good motive. My brother, after this, became a good-for-nothing POS with everybody in the house. It turns out his friends actually were his dealers, you know, for drugs and that stuff. Later, we asked why did they truly leave the other house, and he just said, "I had a fight with her brother and dad." It was vague, but it was true. Sometime around 2018, when I turned 11, we occasionally went to visit his ex-girlfriend and his son. One of those times, my mum asked why she cut contact. The truth was that my brother was emotionally, physically, verbally, and sexually abusing her. She didn't press charges and still refuses to do so because of fear. My mum became enraged at him, but she didn't do anything just yet. Years passed. My brother stayed in our house. Fights between my brother and everybody here became more and more common. My brother smoked pot 24/7 with 2 kids in the freaking house. I started showing signs of depression around those times. I was just 11 years old. Imagine how trashy this was for me to consider suicide at that age. More time passed. It's now 2020, and his first fight with my dad, his stepdad, just happened. My mum was leaving to go to Culiacan, and right after the fight, my brother asked if he could go. My sister, who's not been relevant to this story, offered to buy him a plane ticket. This is where the revenge starts. You see, my sister bought a ticket to go, but not to come back. Mum was the one to come up with this plan. My brother didn't even know it at the time. Culiacan is a city known for being home to various drug cartels. Sinaloa, the state where Culiacan is pretty much horrible. More if you are like my brother. The day my mum returned is when I was notified about all of this. I was expecting my mum to come back with my brother, but she came home alone. My brother was left alone in a hotel with no money, no family, nothing. He tried calling us multiple times through public phones, but wasn't successful at all. Unless he gets a job and a house, he's either going to die of starvation or is going to get killed by a drug cartel. It's the first time in years I've truly felt happy. Thanks a lot for reading all of my nonsense. My God, it is mental to see the effect that just one person can have on a family, to the extent that your sister would offer to buy a plane ticket for him to go and then just never come back. He must be a horrible, horrible person if your whole family hates him that much, because, normally with family, you can put up with people being annoying because they are family. You don't have to be super friendly with them, but they're your family. You love them. To get to this, though, where you're sending your brother to a different country with no method of coming back, that's a bit mad. What I hope, though, is that, he doesn't die, he isn't killed by a drug cartel, but he just, becomes a better person and realizes, oh snap, they've done this on purpose. I need to sort my life out. I'm old, I've got a son, I can't even see my, the mother of my son anymore because, I've done some terrible things to her. Hopefully, for the sake of his son and the sake of his family, he turns his life around, gets a job, or somehow gets the money to get a flight back, and then moves out if he can, gets a proper job, and sorts his life out, because you can't go on living like this and annoying everyone and smoking in a house with 2 kids. That's mad. That is really, really mad, because at that point, you're not just affecting your own life, you're ruining everyone else's. But yeah, I think he needs to do something about that, for sure. Smoke in my car, enjoy the fresh air. A bit of background. I am from Germany. I have only a few rules concerning my home, my stuff, and my car when other people come around. In my home, it is, I am not a servant. If you want to eat, drink, take it from the fridge or pantry. With my tools, it is, ask before using. And in my car, it is, do not smoke in my car. And for all of the above, make a mess and you clean it up. Seems reasonable? Well, not for the guy in this story. This happened in summer 2015. I got my car in December of 2014, a 2008 Volkswagen Golf 1.9 diesel. I still drive it. I was on my way to a convention and decided to take a passenger with me. Really nice to have some company on a 6-hour drive. I picked him up and told him about the no smoking rule. Everything seemed fine until we hit the Autobahn. This guy pulled out a pack of cigarettes and lit one up. This conversation ensued. Hey, what the heck? I told you no smoking. My passenger replied, so what? What are you gonna do about it? Kick you out? It is illegal to stop on the Autobahn. For those of you that don't know, the Autobahn is the German motorway. Now, this is true, to be fair. German law states you can't stop on the Autobahn unless it is an emergency or your car breaks down. You even get fined for running out of gas on the Autobahn, as it is preventable. Anyways, I knew something my smoking passenger didn't. There was a truck stop just 3 kilometers ahead. I got off the Autobahn and stopped at said truck stop. Alright, out my car, now. You can't do that to me. Sure as heck I can. This is my car and I have every right to kick you out. The next part is a bit blurry, as it was mainly screaming at each other. I remember getting out of my car and tossing his suitcase and bag out of my car, then dragging him out of my car and shoving him to the ground. I drove off and listened to music the rest of the drive, singing along to Rammstein. Later that evening, I was in the hotel room relaxing after my drive. I had been there for about 3 hours at that point when I heard a knock on the door. Hotel management, hotel security, convention security, the convention organizer, and the police were all standing there with a smug-looking smoker passenger. The police told me they picked him up about 2 kilometers away from the truck stop on the Autobahn. He claimed I kicked him out at the spot where they found him. The policeman said to me, "You do know this is illegal. You broke highway code XYX and willingly endangered this guy's life." I reply, "Sir, with all respect, he has been lying to you. I kicked him out at the truck stop. You can ring them up. I'm sure they have it on tape. Did he even tell you why I kicked him out?" No, he didn't. I then told them the story and explained I didn't want him in my car anymore because he broke my personal rules in my personal car. I kicked him out at the truck stop, as from there he could have easily called someone to come and pick him up. The smoking passenger turned very pale by that point. The policeman looked at him, furious. "Is this true? Well, you need to come with me." The smoker got charged with falsely accusing me. It was a money-related penalty, in the 4-figure range. It wasn't the first time, as I later found out. The convention actually cancelled his membership, hotel management cancelled his reservation, and I got free drinks at the hotel bar for my entire stay, as well as a free sponsor upgrade for the convention. You see, in my opinion, this is one of those entitled parent stories where I genuinely wouldn't really mind being involved because realistically, imagine you're OP in this situation, right? All that's happened to you is someone has smoked in your car. Yeah, it's annoying, but you can always go and get it cleaned or, just get like an air freshener or something. It's not the end of the world after you told them not to. And then in return for that, you get massive upgrades at your hotel, free drinks, and an upgrade to the convention that you love to go to. I mean, I think that's a good thing, right? I know it's a bit annoying, obviously, to have that guy smoking in your car, but put that behind you, you're going to have a great week at this amazing convention. I reckon it's a win for you, OP. To be fair, though, smoking when you've been asked not to in a reasonable situation is probably one of the rudest things you can do, right? Because, not only is it quite smelly and quite generally disgusting, I guess, to some people, it's also negatively impacting the health of the people you're smoking around. Secondhand smoking is a real thing, even for a short time. I mean, in this situation, it was a 6-hour car drive. That could have a negative impact on somebody's health. Maybe they're asthmatic, you never know. So yeah, don't do that if you're a smoker when someone else asks you not to. OP, you lucked out. That's all I'm going to say. You did luck out, I reckon. Now moving on to our next story. My father is hurt that I didn't tell him I was depressed. He tells people he has 2 children instead of 3. This is something that happened over a long period of time, and one might say that I'm jealous of my sister because of this. It started when I had just ended my 2nd year of high school. I was depressed and had severe anxiety about basically anything at this point. I had stayed at my ex-boyfriend's family for almost 4 months when I moved back to father. Our relationship was already damaged at this point, but it didn't get any better after this. I spent one weekend at my father's, but every night I cried myself to sleep. I was so exhausted from all the stress that had built up, trying to maintain a relationship that seemed one-sided. I talked with my ex's father and asked him for advice. We talked and I felt it was best to move to them, permanently. They noticed me, they saw that I was depressed, they said they could help me, but in retrospect, it only made things worse. I told my father and he became cold. He only said, okay. He didn't ask why or anything. This made me feel so bad, like I'd really hurt him. The day I moved, he only stared at his computer. He didn't say anything to me. He only said goodbye to me when I had taken all my things. I tried to talk to him for years after this, but he either ignored me or told me to talk to my new family. I was conflicted. I felt horrible. I didn't know what to do. I tried to mend things with my father after I graduated high school, explaining why I moved. He said, "Why didn't you tell me? I can't read your mind. How was I supposed to know you were so sad?" Yes, he used the word sad to describe my depression. I tried to explain to him why, that I didn't want to say anything because that would mean I accept that I was depressed. I was actually in denial for the longest time. It wasn't until I almost jumped from the 7th floor that I came to realize how bad it was. Thanks to a friend of mine who had my mother's phone number, my mum called me and on a whim I answered while I was in full panic mode. I guess this is when my mum also realized just how bad my depression was. She begged my friend to take me home to her, and when we did, I just collapsed. My mum stepped up and drove me to doctor after doctor, and finally we got to see a psychiatrist who prescribed me medication. We had this conversation after all this, and I felt strong enough to ask mother to get my father to come so we could talk. My dad then came with his oh-so-familiar quotes he liked to use when he felt he was right and I was wrong. "You should have listened to me and done what I told you. Then we wouldn't be in this situation now." And that was the end of that conversation. Fast forward a few years after my son was born. This was when I last spoke to father eye to eye. I sent him a message asking what I have done wrong. He answered, "Nothing that I'm aware of." I answered back, "Then why won't you respond to me when I call you or text you?" I never got another message again. A few years flies away and my mum calls me one New Year's Eve to tell me some good news and bad news. I was afraid to ask, but I wanted to know. Mum told me the good news first. My father and sister had finally signed the adoption papers. I was so happy for them. I told Mum to congratulate them for me as I had no way of contacting them. Both my father and sister had blocked my number and blocked me on every social media. That's when my mum became serious. She took a deep breath before she broke the bad news. My father had gone round telling people he had 2 children, my sister and my brother. When people had asked him about me, he had only repeated that he had 2 children. So he no longer acknowledged me as his daughter. Mother noticed how I became quiet and tried to comfort me with that. Now that she finally had a good relationship with me, she would never let me go again. This is years after the phone incident, by the way. My mum told me that my father and sister had tried to get my mum and stepfather to ignore me and shut me out too. She had refused and yelled at them for even suggesting such a thing. I didn't know what to feel. Hearing how I, a daddy's girl, no longer had a father after 20 years on and off. He'd basically disowned me. I wanted to cry, but I held it in. I had my son next to me, and I am so thankful for him. If he hadn't been there, I would have jumped headfirst from the balcony, 3rd floor. I broke down after my son fell asleep. I later found out that I could access his Facebook, and I could confirm it by myself. He had written, "My family consists of 2 children, OP's sister and brother, none other." By this time, I had completely shut down. I'm kind of glad that mum told me, instead of finding out by myself later. I know I haven't been the best daughter, or even a good one at times. I've done some pretty bad things for attention, I've lied to get friends, I've made decisions I regret to this day. I was a depressed teenager though, for goodness sake, but it just hurts so much. 5 years has passed since this, and when I had visited my mum and met my dad, they lived in the same town, my dad just ignored me, acted like I wasn't there. He turned his head when he saw me, turned his back at me, or only answered my greetings out of hateful politeness. Oh my goodness, OP, wow. Imagine, pretty much being disowned, effectively disowned, if not legally, mentally, by your parent, your father, for having depression and going through probably the worst period of your life. It makes no sense to me. It's the opposite of what a father or any parent should do, right? Or just any decent human being. They should be there to look after you and, support you if you're going through such a horrible experience like the one you were going through. Do people not realize that you can recover from depression? You just need massive support from people around you, just like your mum in this situation. You said, OP, your mum stepped up, took you to the doctors, and you got prescribed some amazing medication that looked to have been working a little bit, at least. I guess your father doesn't realize that, you can actually help people in depression. They're not just suicidal forever. They can be helped and you can save a life. Genuinely, I wonder what your dad's reaction would have been had you actually jumped off of, your apartment floor like you said you were going to. Would he have regretted his actions? I reckon deep down he definitely would have done. I just don't get what he gets from, not speaking to you or acting as if you don't exist. I don't even understand how you even upset him in the first place. Was it literally by telling him that you were depressed? I just don't get it. Yeah, he's a weird bloke, and there's no wonder that him and your mum have split up. Honestly, I imagine that your mum's new husband, your stepfather, is probably a much better bloke than your dad, because your mum seems like a really great person. Your dad, on the other hand, seems like an absolute pillock. I helped someone get revenge on their gold-digging butt of a significant other. This happened some years ago, but I was just reminded of it. So, here you go, Reddit. I worked as a front desk agent in a large luxury hotel chain for some years. One particular hotel I worked at was located really close to the downtown area, and so we got a large number of young, very wealthy business people who love to party. I usually worked the second and third shifts, which meant I got to see loads of drunken hookups, breakups, cheating, hookers, and more. This particular one though, this is one I will never forget. I was working at the desk when a group of young, well-dressed men come walking in. They've all clearly been drinking, but aren't so drunk that they can't walk right and hold a conversation. One of them comes up to me and tells me that while he and his friends were at the bar, a woman was hitting on him, and even though he told her no multiple times, she wouldn't stop. So he and his friends left, and it wasn't until they got in the Uber that he realized he didn't have his room key anymore. He thinks she took it, and he's concerned that she may come up to his room. He asked that I deactivate his keys, and if she does come up to the hotel, to not let her in. When he was telling me all of this, it didn't sit right with me. He and his friends were all grinning about it and snickering amongst one another. Then he gave a clear description of her without being asked, told me height, body shape, hair colour and style, the kind of dress she was wearing, all while saying it in a mocking tone. Now, this could have easily been because he thought the whole thing was ridiculous or he was too drunk to take it seriously, but it really didn't sit right to me. Either way, I did as I was trained in that situation. I pulled up his reservation, deactivated the keys as requested, made him a new set when he showed me his ID, and even offered to move him to a new room if that would make him feel more comfortable. He and his buddies all laughed a little at that, and he declined, took the keys and they went to their room. About an hour or so later, the woman he described showed up. Now, by this point, my relief for the night had also shown up and was sitting at the front desk while I was in the back office counting down my cash drawer. I hadn't had a chance to tell him about the woman. Just as I'm walking out of the back office with my bag and about to leave, I see my co-worker buzz the doors open and the woman comes rushing in. She cuts through the lobby and down the hall to the elevators. She was barefoot, holding her heels in her hands, and knew exactly where she was going. I rushed up to my colleague and told him what the man from before had told me about her. My co-worker looked at me confused. He then pointed to the screen that had the reservation pulled up and told me that when the woman arrived, she went to use the room keys and they didn't work, so he asked for her room number and last name. She gave both and her name is on the reservation. I looked at the reservation and down in the notes, there was a woman's name listed. The man from before was listed as the primary, but her name was listed as secondary with his consent to be in the room. I was confused. I thought maybe she wasn't the same woman he was talking about, but to be on the safe side, I called the man in his room and told him the situation and that we allowed a woman fitting the description he gave to enter the building because she confirmed her name was on the room. He laughed, said he forgot her name was on the room and asked that I removed it. I was now super confused and I asked to make sure. Sir, just to be clear, the woman you met at the bar tonight was with you at check-in hours ago and was allowed keys then, but now she is not? At this point, he is laughing to all his friends in the room. Oh, guys, I confused the poor girl. Gets back on the phone with me. Yeah, sweetheart, she's banned from the room. Don't worry about the other details, just take her name off. I see. Then if she isn't going to be on the room anymore, would you like us to call the police and have her removed from the property? Whoa, that's too far there. Don't worry, she'll get the hint soon enough. We ended the call there and I got really suspicious of this. I told my co-worker to not do anything and that I was going to stick around for a bit to see if anything happened. A short time later, the woman came off the elevator pouring tears, sobbing while on the phone with someone. She sat down in our lobby and my co-worker and I tried to look busy while eavesdropping hard on her phone call. She was sobbing on the phone to her mum and sister. From what she told them, she was invited out to spend the week with her boyfriend, meeting all of his old college buddies. This being their first night, they all met up for dinner and drinks. After a bit, she went to the restroom and when she came back, she caught her boyfriend hitting on another woman. His friends all bet that he wouldn't do it. When she confronted him, annoyed, he called her a bunch of names and humiliated her in front of his friends and the entire bar. All of his friends joined in on mocking her and he threw in her face that she was nothing without me and dumped her right there. He and his friends then took an Uber back and left her stranded at the bar with no money and no way back. She then had to use her phone's GPS and walk back to the hotel from the bar barefoot. She had heels and walking 2 miles in those was not going to cut it. Well, actually, it probably might have cut it. Her toes I'm talking about. Apologies for that terrible pun. She was asking her mum and sister for help as he wouldn't let her in the room to get her luggage or her wallet. My heart broke and I felt horrible. I helped this guy treat this poor woman like rubbish and now he and all his friends were up there laughing at her while she's sitting in our lobby sobbing and with nothing. I went over to our snacks area in the lobby, grabbed her a bottle of water and brought it to her. I told her that I couldn't help but overhear the conversation and was very sorry for her situation and asked if she would like us to help her. I informed her that if he was keeping her from getting to her things, we could call the police and have them force him to hand over her things so she could leave if she'd like. Or if she wanted to let her mum or sister pay for a room, we'd be happy to give her a very low rate in a room far from him. She thanked me, took the water and tried to calm down and talk to me about what all was happening and what her options were. Eventually, we decided on her staying in the hotel for the night and figuring out the rest in the morning. As we make it to the desk, she asked me to try and run her credit card to see if it has enough on it for another room. I ask her what she means by another room, and she tells me that she's actually paying for the room he's in, that his name is on the room because he booked it, but it's her card paying for everything. This intrigued me. I asked why she was paying for the room if it was in his name. She told me that she's the one with the job, not him. That he hasn't been able to find a job in his field since graduating from college and is essentially living off his parents' money. But just after they started dating, his parents cut him off, so he's been living off of her money. That's why she was so upset and confused by how he had been acting all night. He was sweet and doing everything for her back home, but since he met up with his friends, he did a full 180 and hasn't been the same guy the entire time. I wanted to tell her that it was obvious he was using her for the money and that he would probably blame his friends for all of this and try to get back with her later on, but I doubted she would have listened to me or cared for a complete stranger to butt in on her personal life like that. So instead, I offered up a sweet piece of revenge. I informed her that, considering she's the one paying for the room, if she can confirm that it is her card on file with some sort of photo ID and verify the last 4 digits of the card number, that's honestly all this hotel company required, then she could, if she wanted to, kick him out of the room and keep it all to herself. But considering how poorly her night has been, if she were indeed able to prove she is the one paying for the room, then I'd be more than happy to provide for her the biggest luxury upgrade we offered at our property, largest suite we had, full hotel amenity access, and I'd even have my co-worker fish out a bottle of champagne and some fresh strawberries for her to have sent to her room, all free of charge. That sounds incredible. She was taken aback by the offer and was very sincerely tempted, but she looked like she was about to say no. Then I told her that since she would be upgrading her room, that would require moving her things from her current room into her new one, which means the room that she is currently listed in would need to be vacated immediately. If anyone was to remain in the room after we have demanded it to be vacated, we are required to have them escorted off the property or they pay for the room, their choice. She then thought about it, pulled up her card's banking app and showed me the screen. It had a photo of her full name, the card's full number, and the hold from our hotel for the room. She asked if that worked. It was good enough for me. I quickly upgraded her, moved everything over in the system, and before I could say a word to my co-worker, he was already grabbing a set of master keys, a bell cart, and was asking her what her luggage looked like since he would be the one retrieving it for her to deliver to her room. He did not want her to have to deal with her ex again. She smiled and told him which ones were hers and that she hadn't unpacked yet. My co-worker runs down to the elevators and up to fetch her things, while I make her a new set of keys and send her off to her new room. Once she's on the elevator, my phone at the desk starts ringing. It's the ex-boyfriend, and he's very angry about why my co-worker has entered the room and is taking her things. I calmly explain that I cannot give out the private information of any of our guests, and that if he would like to remain in his room, he will need to pay for it, as there is no longer a method of payment on his room. He, not surprisingly, blew up. He's making a ton of demands and at the same time yelling at my co-worker to stop what he's doing, but it's obvious from the way he's yelling at him that my co-worker isn't listening to him. I can even hear the guy's friends telling him to chill out and just pay for the room. I then explain that we will give him a courtesy 10 minutes to make a decision, at which point if he doesn't have payment ready, then he must vacate the building or we will be forced to call the authorities and have him evicted. He continues to yell at me. He screams, swears, threatens, and yells for a solid minute before taking a breath. I then tell him he has 9 minutes remaining and ask if he has come to a decision yet. He hangs up on me. Oh, brilliant. 9 minutes later, I call the room and he doesn't answer. I call again, no answer. I call a third time, he picks up, then immediately hangs up. So I call the police and tell them what's going on and they said they're on their way. The officers arrive. I tell them what's going on. We go up to the room together and the man and his friends are all white as ghosts when they see the cops. The cops explain to the ex-boyfriend and his friends that they're being evicted. The ex-boyfriend starts trying to talk to me, but the cops stop him and tell him to only talk to them. I told him about his attitude on the phone before. The friends are all offering to pay for the room at this point, and the cops look to me and ask if that would be acceptable. I smile very sweetly and say no, and the cops nod and start rushing all of the guys to grab their things and leave the room. The ex-boyfriend is the last one out the door, carrying his 2 bags and complaining that he isn't even given a luggage cart and has to carry his own things. His friends all looked fuming at him. I go with the officers to escort all of them out of the building and run into my co-worker in the lobby. He waits until they're all outside in the parking lot to tell me that the woman is in her new room, loves it, and said no to the champagne. She just wanted sleep. I'm not surprised. I didn't get to see her before she left town the next day, but the ex-boyfriend did try calling our hotel to complain a number of times, and even tried leaving some bad reviews of us online and lied through all of it. I hope she doesn't have to ever deal with him again. Wow, first of all, what an incredible story. I mean, that was just amazing from start to finish. Also, secondly, guys, if you are sitting there right now thinking to yourself, wow, I did not expect the guy to be the gold digger, then I'm not gonna lie, I'm ashamed to say that in all honesty, I also thought that as well. I guess that just shows the double standards that we all have, unless none of you are thinking that and it's just me. Fair enough if you're not thinking that, by the way. Well done to you. You're grounded for having depression. My mother is a terrible human being. She's always been abusive to me, and I want to have a decent relationship with her, but it's extremely difficult because of her behaviour. Growing up, I got bullied a lot for being a bit weird, a trait I now pride myself on. Long story short, this and a multitude of other factors ended up having me diagnosed with depression in high school. My mother's solution to fixing this would be to punish me in a variety of ways. One of the most common was with hard labour. We had a wood-burning stove and would stock up on wood to last the winter. If I wasn't smiling, she usually would force me to go to our basement to cut and pile wood. A lot of the time, I'd get sent to my room for not being happy, usually without meals. She commonly banned me from playing video games because I was acting depressed. One time, during a family trip to the zoo in the city my grandparents live in, they threatened to go home without visiting my grandparents unless I put on a smile. My grandparents were everything to me. They were easily the only ones who bothered to make me feel cared for, so this was one of the worst punishments imaginable. This happened constantly throughout my time living with her, amongst many other things. She would especially do this when she was in public, as she didn't want my poor mental health to tarnish her image in the community. Oh wow, what an incredibly selfish mum, Jesus. I mean, if there's one thing that's going to make your kid happier if they're feeling down, it's not feeding them. What an amazing solution. Honestly, I read some of these stories and they're a bit bemusing. This one is very top of that list. I just don't understand the logic here at all. Imagine being made to feel bad by your own mother because you're suffering with mental health issues. What is this world? Now moving on to our next story. Why must you? Karen, why? It's 11 PM. Stop. I have worked at McDonald's in Georgia for 5 months now. I am trained to work any station except grill, which means 9 times out of 10 you could walk in and see me at the counter or in the drive-thru windows. The time was 10:56. We close at 11 o'clock. I'm in the front window, which means I make the drinks and hand out the food. We are pre-closing, with only 4 minutes left before we shut down. This is normal. Coffee machines are off, grills are being cleaned and shut down, dishes are being washed, and we got cleaning staff mopping the lobby. At 10:57, here comes Karen and 7 children, all of which look freaking tired. It ain't even funny. She comes to the register and just starts yelling, "Excuse me, is there someone who is going to take my order?" My manager looks at me with this "go handle this" look. So I go to the front counter and I'm like, "Hi, I'm sorry, but we are closing up right now." She looks me up and down and just scoffs. "Oh, your website says you close at 11. It's not 11. You can take my order." I sigh because this is policy. If a customer comes in before closing, we are obligated to take their order. So I log into the system and start taking her order. 15 double cheeseburgers, 15 large fries, 15 sweet teas, and 3 large coffees. I was like, "Mom, there is no way the staff can do all of that. Our grills are shut off for the night, and there are only 4 10-to-1 patties in our heat box. Our coffee machines are off, and the pots are being washed, and we have enough sweet tea to fill 3 large cups, not 15. Now at this point, she is red in the face. "You will turn it all back on, or I will have you fired. This is discrimination. You cannot do this to a white woman in the South. My husband is an army soldier. You should have more respect for me." "Mom, I'm not being discriminatory. It's almost 11 and our staff are closing up. As for you feeling that this should be stopped and restarted just because we are in the South and you are white, that's just wrong." By now, my manager is standing behind me on the phone with corporate. Mom, I'm the shift manager for tonight. What is the problem? This racist, lesbian female dog is refusing my order because I'm a white woman married to an army soldier. I demand our order be completely free for the insulting behaviour of this dumb idiot. My children are scarred for life because of her. Well, at this point, my blood was boiling. Not only did she call me a racist, but she assumed my sexuality because my hair is short. First off, I'm white as well. My hair is styled in an undercut with slight bangs and it's a blue-green colour. Second off, when did I say I refused the order because of her race or her husband's occupation? Anyway, my manager is just staring at her and says, Mom, I'm on the phone with corporate and I've been informed to tell you that unless you leave the premises now, I am well within my rights to call the police. You are harassing my employee after our closing time and using rather choice words in our family-friendly lobby. In the long and short, that's what caused me a free day off, with pay, because I didn't get to leave McDonald's till 2 a.m. on a school night, because we did have to call the police. I don't like Southern Karens. Well guys, I can't say I've ever had the pleasure or displeasure of meeting a Southern Karen, but after this story, OP, I'm inclined to agree with you. They sound absolutely terrible. I mean, maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I'm generalizing, but Jesus, I would not want to run into a woman like this. Oh, especially not if I was working in customer service or, in a fast food joint like this. Jesus, that would be terrible. What a way to spend a night. So you left at 2 a.m. having to call the police. I really want to know more, because I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this story. What happened next? I want to know. Update me, OP, please. Moving on to our next story. Entitled Dad Demands I Fail Because I Caused His Daughter to Fail. This one will need a lot of context, so bear with me here. I'm 19 at college. Last year, I started a language education career. My first language is Spanish, and even though I often have mistakes, I can understand and speak English. Then realised I wasn't in the right place, so I dropped out during the first semester. So now I'm studying theatre, which has always been my true passion. Anyway, during my first semester on language education, we had to do tutoring as a part of our grade. The college I went to also had language classes on Saturdays for anyone who wanted to learn a second language. This college only allowed people on their language education's career that had either completed the Saturday's course, depending on your progress can last up to 8 years, or that may prove they can speak at least 2 languages by a written and oral exam. So, I was doing tutorings for English speakers that struggle in their Spanish lessons. One of my tutees was an 18-year-old girl who shined by her absence. She just didn't show up, not even once, and never gave me a heads up or explained afterwards why she didn't come. I just reported with my teacher that she didn't appear, then reached out to her to reschedule the dates of our meeting and called it a day. We were given our tutees or parents' contact to set up the day and hour of our meeting within the college facilities. Then the teacher assigned a classroom for the tutorings and had a full report of all tutorings we had to do. Nothing of interest happened until a few days ago, when I received a call from a number I didn't recognise, and as the dumb boy I am, I answered. Hello, who's this? It was her entitled dad. Are you OP? Yes, I am. What can I help you with? Working on retail has taken its toll on me. It's your fault that my daughter failed her exams. Excuse me? I don't know what... You tutored my daughter and she didn't learn anything from you. You sabotaged her and made her fail. I'll report you to your teacher and make you fail too. Sir, I dropped out last year. That's because of your incompetence. Then you have to pay me for wasting my time taking her to your classes. Sir, who is your daughter? I'm not telling you anything. Listen, I need to know her name to give it to my ex-teacher so he can tell you about my tutoring with her. So the entitled dad does say her name. I reply, sir, she didn't show up once to... Don't you dare! You're lying! I took her to tutoring every time you summoned her. I want to talk to your teacher right now. I guess he forgot I told him I dropped out. Wait a moment. I checked my cell phone for my teacher's number and quickly gave him a heads up on what was happening. It's insert number here. Anything... He hung up on me. A while later, my teacher informed me of how rude the parent was with him and how he complained of me, saying I'd been rude to him and I lied telling him his daughter never did tutoring with me, and demanded I had to fail the semester. The teacher explained that I had dropped out, then showed him the empty reports of her tutorings, explained to him that her daughter and I had never even met. He told me that after he sent him the reports, the dad stayed silent for like 20 seconds and then hung up on him. So I guess I won't fail at the college I don't attend. I mean, seriously, how dumb do you have to be? This guy has just told you on the phone, I don't even go to this college anymore, so how are you going to fail me? I don't even attend. Then you double down, and you're like, no, I'm going to fail you. Like, seriously, what sort of logic or what sort of IQ do you have to say such a stupid thing like that? I mean, at that point, you know you've lost the argument, when you're saying things that just make zero sense. But yeah, this is Entitled Parents. I've got very used to it, that is for sure. Actually, you know what? I do potentially feel a bit bad for this dad, because maybe, I haven't even clocked this right, maybe he's being legit and he actually was dropping her off, just she was not going to your classes. If that is the case, and I think the more I think about it, it actually could be, then I feel a little bit bad for him, because his daughter is kind of cheating him out of money, and you know, he's kind of been embarrassed by his daughter in this entire situation. Do you reckon that's the case, guys, or not? What do you reckon? Comment down below. I'm not too sure, to be honest. Now moving on to our final story. Entitled mum thinks she has to be invited to everything. Gets husband to scream at us. Sandy is my uncle's girlfriend. No one in our family but my uncle likes Sandy. Why? Well, for starters, she's still married and living with her husband and daughter. Secondly, she's a huge narcissist and throws a tantrum every time she doesn't get her way. About a month into my uncle and her dating, we were going to take family pictures, and she's there with her daughter. We ask her for a few pics with just my grandma and her kids/grandkids, but that didn't go over well at all. Sandy starts screaming that she's dating my uncle, so that means she and her daughter are family too, and deserve to be in the pictures just as much as anyone else. Sandy has even stalked my grandma, who is only 4'9" and in her late 70s. Back in March, when the pandemic started, my grandma was still living alone, so she had to do her own errands. My grandma went to Costco one day, and there Sandy was casually just running into her. Sandy was thinking about getting a Costco membership, but she doesn't like the Costco that's 30 minutes closer to her. Okay. Then, a few weeks later, she shows up at the same pharmacy that my grandma goes to because Sandy's pharmacy didn't have the medicine she needed, so they sent her to one that was 35 minutes from her. Sandy also showed up at my grandma's bank on the exact day that my grandma decided to open a savings account for her grandkids. Sandy asked my grandma what she was doing, and when my grandma told her, Sandy launched into a fit because, what about my daughter? She's technically your grandkid too. My uncle and her, by the way, had only been dating for about 3 to 4 months at that point. Just as my grandma was about to say something, the bank security came over and asked if my grandma was okay. They knew her from the decades of her banking there, as well as all of her kids and grandkids. So when my grandma said no, they immediately escorted Sandy out. Shortly after that, my grandma moved states to live with my aunt, and that's so far been the last stalking incident. On Thanksgiving, we all did a Zoom dinner instead of having a big gathering. About a half hour into the meal, my uncle's phone starts going crazy. It's Sandy. She starts demanding to know why she wasn't invited and goes into full tantrum mode. So my uncle caves and sends her the link. As soon as she gets on, Sandy starts screaming, and her daughter, Amy, a 12-year-old, is running around in the background, screaming and crying that it's not fair. Sandy starts calling us all selfish female dogs, and then her actual husband starts yelling at us that we can't do that to his wife. My grandma had had enough of Sandy and scoffed at her. See, this is why nobody here likes you. This is why we do everything without you. This is why I'm so glad that you and that rabid kid of yours aren't invited to my granddaughter's wedding. No big dramatic ending. We just ended the call because everyone was super angry. We decided to do another one without my uncle this time, and that was fine. Oh yeah, from the jump with this story, I was a bit weirded out, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, if you're married to someone else, then you also have a boyfriend, as in your uncle OP in this story. I mean, fair enough, if you want to be polyamorous, that's all good, but it's a bit weird, isn't it? It's just a bit like, it's strange, that's all I'm gonna say. I don't really know why the entitled woman's husband is allowing that, but who am I to judge? I'm just me. So who cares? Yeah, I just think it's a bit weird, I'm not gonna lie. And then also like saying or claiming that your kids are part of the family, nah, They're not, because you're not family. Your uncle, OP's uncle, is just your boyfriend. You're not married to him, unlike your actual husband. Weird one. Very, very weird one. I'm not completely sure how I feel. I'm just a bit weirded out. I was fired and made the company lose over £100,000. So, I used to work at a family-run builders merchants and was a trade sales advisor. I was fired for bringing up health and safety concerns in an email sent to a manager, and for the fact I was apparently unhappy in my role. I did nothing wrong, but they still sacked me. Now, when I worked there, I had clients that I had built good relationships with, and even become friends with some of them. They would get me beers and whiskey at Christmas, or have barbecues and so on outside of work. Anyway, back to the revenge. I was fired, which in my opinion was unfair, and it was during this COVID-19 pandemic. I'd worked through the entire way until I was fired. So I wanted revenge. I contacted multiple clients and friends, and most of them said, okay, we won't use that company if they treat the staff the way they did me. One client easily spends over £100,000 a year, easily in the top 3 customers they had. He used them because I would get him the best prices, etc, etc. As soon as I'm fired, I call him and let him know what happened, and he straight away promises not to use them again. So, big middle finger to the owners of that S-hole. I hope you learn to treat your employees better or go under. Oh, I tell you what, OP, I'm not getting very good vibes from your ex-company through this story at all. So pretty much you're telling me you call up your boss and you let him know, look, I'm a bit worried. We have some health and safety concerns. Can you look into them, please? And because you're, kind of auditing your own company and looking out for the health and safety of your own company and its employees, your boss is like, nah, you're gone. That is not a good boss right there, and definitely not somebody that I would want to work for. I do think it's pretty amazing, though, that they kick you out and you're just like, you know what? Fair enough, but now you're going to have no clients anymore, and I'm going to cost you hundreds of thousands of pounds. It's so funny. Like, imagine they're like, oh no, you know what, guys? Imagine them in a board meeting. They're like, guys, we've messed up here. We've lost a lot of money, and you're just, chilling, no job, but yeah, you know that you've cost them a lot of money. Now moving on to our second story. Fired from last job, but I got the last laugh. I worked at a retail chain that sold pet supplies and products. When I started working there, it was great. Family owned, and everyone I worked with was fantastic. The owners eventually wanted to retire and sold the small chain to an investment group. Once the investment group took over, almost all but a few employees were let go, forced out, or just quit. I hung on for a little while longer before I got promoted at my other job. The new company brings in a new manager to my store. My store was the top performing store in the entire chain, bringing in about $10,000 to $12,000 per day on average. It was always more on weekends and especially around the holidays. The new manager is a Mr. Company man. Company told him they only want employees around for 2 to 3 years. Myself and 2 others had been there for 10 plus. So naturally, he began ruffling feathers and giving us all a hard time. Unfortunately, he decided on me first. Now, Mr. Company Man found out I work 2 jobs. The 2 jobs are not in related fields, so there was no chance of any conflicts of interest on my end. However, my second job requires me to work nights and weekends. When Mr. Company Man found this out, he demanded I work nights/weekends there, so it was fair for everyone. I didn't work nights and weekends there because I was that store's only OSHA certified forklift operator, and deliveries didn't come at night. They came weekday mornings every day. But Mr. Company Man didn't want to hear that and told me I either had to work nights and weekends or that day would be my last. I told him, do not threaten me with a good time. I suppose today is my last day then. I was pretty annoyed about it, but it's not a big deal now. It ended up being the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I went home early, didn't finish my shift because F 'em. But when I got home, I decided to call my local OSHA inspector and report them for not having a certified operator on staff, as well as numerous other hazards. Needless to say, they lost close to 3 weeks' profit from all the violations the inspector found. I was surprised they even showed up. In my state, the inspector will call you back after an inspection and tell you if your claims were founded or not. Mine were, and Mr. Company Man got his butt chewed out so bad he ended up quitting. You know what, I guess that's the thing when you do fire an employee, they're going to know so much about that company, and if they want to, like OP right here, why can't they just report you for the things that they already know are going wrong in the company? Because, they've been there for 10 plus years, they work there every single day, they know what's going wrong, they know the violations, they know who a forklift operator is, for goodness sake. So yeah, you've got to be careful as a boss. If you're going to fire somebody, you better make sure they've got no dirt on you, or the company could be in real trouble, that's for sure. I mean, yeah, fair enough, the majority of ex-employees aren't going to go out for revenge like this guy, but thank God you did, OP, because, yeah, this company and this company man, the manager especially, definitely deserve this justice. Now moving on to our final story, I did to my neighbour what they did to others. To start, I bought a house with the intention of doing a flip. When I moved in, the self-appointed block captain let me know who they were the first day. Sadly, they were my next door neighbours. I tried to be friendly, but listening to them, I realised how horrible they were, and I just tried to still be civil. My significant other kept saying, just wait for it to be our turn. Sorry, a self-appointed block captain. How much of a loser do you have to be to call yourself the captain of the block? Jesus. They bragged about, through their contracts with the city, forcing people to make improvements on their houses, getting undesirable renters out of the houses, and just harassing people in general. As I worked on flipping my house, the wife became a worse thorn in my side. To start, she demanded I put up a fence so people would quit cutting through my yard and scaring her. Then, her and the husband demanded I take care of the weeds in the yard or they will do it and bill me. After a storm, a tree scraped their shingles and they asked for $1,200 to replace them. The tree was there before I moved in, and by co-ed, they are responsible to cut back the branches to the property line. When I wouldn't pay, they had a relative jump my fence and cut the trees down. Needless to say, I just began to ignore them, so the wife became a constant gnat and moved on to another target. Then, one day, as I was tearing down my deck for a patio, I realised she'd put a feral cat colony on a section of my property. I'd wondered why all the stray cats were around, and I finally found out. I reached out to the city and demanded it be removed, but they said she followed the law on getting it in place. As I tried to get it shut down, she began unhinged behaviour, from standing in her window staring at me, yelling out the window at me, to hitting the fence with items to scare my dog. Here, my revenge started. I started by filing a HRO, or harassment restraining order, against the wife, and had it granted ex parte with the evidence I provided. Of course, she contested as it was defamatory to her character. Before the hearing, the husband tried to physically intimidate me, so I just filed one against him as well, and it was also granted ex parte. In the hearing, it came up that there was an HRO against the husband as well. They dodged being served until I had it published as a means of service. I started to make complaints about them and their house as well. Also, I made police calls when necessary. As I did this, the other neighbours began to realise they could do to them what they had done to them and others. For example, as I was having my front door replaced, I needed a building work permit. I knew they were doing internal remodelling, so I called a city inspector and they were fined for not having a permit themselves. As she ranted, the wife that is, at the inspector, he looked at my window and saw I had mine displayed. Their back porch became hoarded, so I made another call to a city inspector and they had to clear it out. Then they had a broken window on the porch door, so I called an inspector and they had to replace the door. Next, the paint on their house was peeling, so I called an inspector and they had to repaint. The inspector also found the wood underneath was rotted and their front porch was sloping, so they needed to fix the front porch, sections of wood, and repaint. Through all of this, they had cameras up to prove they were not doing the things I said, i.e. hitting the fence. They also pointed a camera at my backyard. As it was legal to point a camera into my yard, and a part of my HRO was her intrusive watching behaviours, I gave the camera the middle finger on my way to and from my garage. When the wife complained, with the city tiring of her at this point, their response was she was admitting to intrusively watching me. The fight over the cat colony came to an end when I realised one of the cats had a serious disease and I began to capture them and turn them into animal control. Don't worry, animal control was part of the feral cat program, so they would not be put down, but the neighbour would have to pay a fine to get each cat out or have the colony closed. Finally, I caught the sick one and it had rabies. Part of the program was for her to capture each new cat and have it vaccinated, something she admitted to willing not doing on her GoFundMe for the colony. I soon had that GoFundMe shut down when I provided the evidence that she was not using the funds as she stated they were going to be used. The city now had to act to close the colony. The person at Animal Control who wouldn't respond to my complaints was actually fired. The neighbours called in a city mediator, who we met with and presented all the evidence. But we said we would not meet with the neighbours, and provided him with extremely racist tweets these guys had made about our other neighbours. The city then cut ties with them as community leaders. With their power to bully gone, and having spent what I can only imagine in fines and repairs, like they forced on other neighbours, after 14 years they sold their house and moved out. Way out to the suburbs where they only have one neighbour about 50 yards away. They knew I was wrapping up my flip and would be out in less than a year. Without being able to bully their neighbours, with people having their back, they seemed to have no further reason to stay. Needless to say, I did several more things to wear them down. Finally, when I listed my house, it was sold, while theirs was still on the market. As a final FU to them, I reported to the county they had both the new and old house listed as their homestead, meaning they were paying less in property taxes, so they got hit with more fines on my way out. Oh, this story is so good because you've just used their exact technique that they've probably been employing for years on their other neighbours to get their way against them. It's amazing. You know, you come in and they're like, straight away, no, you have to pay damages on this, repair on this, tax on this. And you're like, okay, fine, but I'll match you. And in fact, I'll raise you. And now I'm going to go through the entire, government document about neighbouring societies and see which sections you are for and which you are against, and then call an inspector to just ruin your life and probably cost you tens of thousands of dollars. Amazing stuff. And now they can't even sell their home. That is just the icing on top of the cake. OP, you are a legend. A very pedantic legend, I must say, but it was definitely worth it in this story. How I ruined 2013 Thanksgiving by getting mad at an entitled kid for deliberately hitting me with a wooden chair. So this all happened 7 years ago when I was a 16-year-old boy. It was Thanksgiving and the family was going to get together for it. But the majority of people going to the party were a part of my stepmom's family, and her entire family, including herself, happened to be the most narcissistic folk you would ever know in your life. They could accidentally give you a serious injury and still somehow make it your fault. My dad wasn't any better, honestly. All he ever cared about was women and his reputation. I used to lie to save his reputation, but I'm not hiding it anymore. Anyways, my dad, my stepmom, my stepbrother, and I all got ready and started heading over to my stepmom's parents' house. And on the way, they both gave me and my stepbrother a lecture on being on your best behavior, and we will take you home if you ruin this day. I was honestly not at all interested in going to this party. I knew that I was going to be the only teen there, so there isn't anyone my age to socialize with, and trying to socialize with a bunch of narcissists is like trying to find the edge of a sphere. Also, there was a specific person who was going to be there, a sadistic 8-year-old demon child we will call Tyrant, because his real name honestly sounded very close to that. Tyrant is literally the ideal nightmare bully we all were scared of encountering when we were in elementary school. He would pick on others for his own amusement, get physical, kill bugs and rodents, and have a maniacal giggle as he did any of this. Worst of all, Tyrant's parents enabled this. They would excuse anything he did, no matter how bad it was, and say it's because he has a learning disability and we should go easy on him. This I honestly had a hard time believing because I was born with a learning difficulty myself and high-functioning autism, so I just could not accept the thought that all of this was at the fault of a learning disability. Now that I look back on it, he and his parents were very much like the Dursley family. So, when we arrived at the house, we were let in by my stepmom's dad, and the house was full of people. Some I know, and some I didn't know. I looked around and did not see Tyrant or his parents in sight, and got a little excited, thinking I wouldn't have to deal with the little devil. But before I could relax, my dad told me that I need to go to the children's room with my stepbrother. I paused for a moment and then asked him why I can't stay out in the living room, and he said, "The owner's rule is children go into the children's room. Now go in there." I tried to rebel, tell him that at 16 I shouldn't be forced into a room full of kids way younger than me, but he got mad and threatened to take me home with no food. I honestly don't know why I didn't take that instead of staying, because it would have been a lot better than what is to come. But I guess I was hungry and I chose to stay. So I went to the children's room. The children's room was a small square-shaped room that had one couch, some toy bins, a children's wooden table with chairs, and a TV. There were at least 3 kids in there, one being the demon spawn himself, Tyrant, who is talking to his parents. His parents are just dropping him off into the room, telling him to be a good little angel, etc., and they go to leave the room. Now, as they are leaving, they don't even acknowledge my existence, nearly bumping into me as they approach the door. It boggles my mind how people are fine with being so rude, especially to those way younger than them. After they left the room, Tyrant let out an excited screech and went ballistic on the toy bins, throwing things out everywhere. I just sat there on the couch trying to cancel out the inhumane noises made by this child when I remembered that there is a TV in this room. I thought that maybe if I turned on some cartoons that I would be able to calm him down. So I looked for the remote. I search around the room and there is no remote to be found. After looking for it, I decided to leave the room to go ask my stepmom's parents if they knew where it was. When I got to them, I was greeted with a "What are you doing out here?" and I asked them if they knew where the remotes were. My stepmom's dad then told me that he took them away before we all got here, so we can make the kids play together and not stare at a screen like zombies. They then told me to go back to the room, and my stepmom's mum followed me back. When I got back to the room, it was a mess. Tyrant managed to trash the entire room the one single minute I was gone. My stepmom's mum told me, "Since you are the oldest in here, I expect you to clean up after the kids. Thanks." But before I could even protest that, she shut the door. I groaned in disappointment and went to go clean up the toys scattered all over. After cleaning it all up, I sat on the couch and closed my eyes, letting out a sigh in boredom. Then, suddenly, I hear a loud bang. I look and see Tyrant throwing toys like an NFL quarterback. Some of the kids, including my stepbrother, move out of the way to dodge some of the flying action figures and blocks. I went out of the room and tried to get the attention of Tyrant's parents. When I got up to them, I tried to tell them what is happening, but they interrupted me, saying, "No, you aren't allowed out here. Go back to the kids' room." Of course, me being the typically forcefully obedient teenager, I turned around and went back to the room, which again was a mess. Yet another round of cleaning up after another person's child. Hooray! Honestly, I can't believe back then why I never questioned why this 8-year-old was behaving like a 4-year-old, but I guess I already had the answer when I met his parents back then for the first time. Anyways, after cleaning up yet another mess, I tried to once again lay down on the couch. I thought that maybe if I got a little nap in, I would be able to make this night go by faster. Tyrant started to calm down, so it was the perfect timing. I started to doze off when I heard the sound of children arguing. I sit back up and see Tyrant pulling toys away from my stepbrother while saying, "It's mine." I intervened and told them to stop fighting. I pulled out some building blocks that I originally put away and suggested they play with these together. And they actually agreed. Thank God. An uneventful hour passes, and I'm starting to wonder when the food will be done. I stand up to go and ask the adults, but then I remembered that they don't like me out there, so I just peeked out the door. The adults were all at the table, talking about various stuff and laughing over terrible jokes. I saw that no food was out on the table, so I assumed that it wasn't done cooking yet. Then I hear a loud smack sound. I turn around and see one of the kids crying, holding their cheek, while Tyrant is giggling in the corner. I asked him what happened, and he told me that Tyrant hit him. I went over to him, who was still giggling like a pest, and tried to tell him what he did was wrong. But he interrupted me by saying, "You're not my dad," and went back to playing with toys. I was just standing there, wondering what to do, seeing this little brat act like this, and the other kid still holding his cheek and sniffling. I knew that going out of the room to tell his parents would make them mad, but I gave into it and went out anyways. Before they could even tell me to go back to the room, I interrupted them and said, "No, you have to listen. Tyrant is hitting the other kids and making them cry." The entire table went silent. At that point, I thought I finally had their attention, but Tyrant's mum then said, "Why don't you do something about that then?" I told her that I in fact did, but he didn't listen to me. The adults were all mumbling to each other, and Tyrant's dad then said, "You are old enough to know how to deal with this. Stop being a tattletale." I looked around at the other adults with a "is he serious?" face, but they all looked at me disappointingly. Even my dad, who looked red and angry at me. I said, fine, and went back to the room. I was done with the BS at this rate. Tyrant was being awful and the adults were not helping. So I thought to myself that if they wanted me to handle it, then fine, I will handle it my way. As I entered the room, I of course expected it to be a mess, but it was beyond that. The children's table was knocked over, puzzle pieces everywhere, and the kids trying to pick them up. I groaned, knowing who exactly did this, but I couldn't see Tyrant. I looked around, thinking he was hiding in a corner, but he wasn't even in sight. Although it was odd he just vanished like that, I bent down on my knees to pick up the table and help the kids pick up the puzzle pieces. That's when I hear that disturbing giggle again. I pause, knowing whose giggle that was. I look up, and then it happened. Tyrant swung a small wooden chair right into my face. The pain was so intense, I rolled backwards, my hands on my face, moaning in pain, trying to process what just happened. After the pain started to calm down, I get on one knee, looking at how Tyrant was giggling and holding the chair, as all the other kids stare in shock at him. That's when it all came to me. This little demon had planned this. He deliberately made a large mess, knowing I would bend down to clean it, so he would be able to hit me. At that point, all I felt was anger. I stood up, glaring at Tyrant as he giggled. Then, this kid had the audacity to go in for another strike, this time aiming for my stomach. But I grabbed the chair mid-swing, pulled it out of his hands, and slammed it on the ground, and let out a loud, "Enough!" I said it so loud that it boomed through the entire house. Everything stopped. The kids, the noises, and even the adults talking. Uh-oh, Tyrant just stared at me, surprised, as I stood there still with anger, but then I hear loud stomping coming. The door swings open and it's my dad. He yells at me to come out of the room right now and to go and talk with the adults. When I go out, I see that the adults were all staring at me like I just poisoned the water hole. My stepmom then said, "Why are you yelling at kids?" I tried to tell her, but I was interrupted by Tyrant's mum, who said, "You have no reason to yell at kids." It was then I get lectured by each and every adult there at the same time, each talking over each other at me, telling me how awful and disrespectful I am. I started to cry and shouted at them to stop. I shouted that I yelled because Tyrant had hit me on the head with a chair. They all stopped and looked at each other. Again, I think I finally got their attention at this point, but I was wrong. Tyrant's mum spoke up and said, "But he's way shorter than you. How could he do that?" And before I could explain it, his dad says, "Even if he did it, he can't hurt that bad. He's only 8. These morons have no idea what it feels like to be hit in the face with a chair. I snapped and told them that if they listened and let me speak, they would get it. I guess I said it in a really peed off tone because the adults gasped and looked at me like I just killed someone. My dad then said, "That's it," stood up and grabbed me by the arm. He dragged me out into his car and started it. I asked him what he's doing and he told me, "Your attitude has ruined Thanksgiving for us. I'm taking you back home. You don't deserve to have Thanksgiving dinner." I didn't even want to argue with him. I was angry, sick of all the BS, and I actually wanted to go home at that point. He drops me off back at home and he sped off in a hurry. So there I was, home alone, where I made my Thanksgiving dinner myself. Some soup and a grilled cheese. It was depressing, but it was a heck of a lot better than being stuck in that house with that demon spawn. The next day, I got the usual, "You are grounded for a month," and "I'm taking your stuff away," but I didn't care. I was used to being punished regularly and treated like a troubled teen, but thankfully, all that ended when I finally got to move out in 2018. My dad did divorce my stepmom before that, but none of that mattered at the time, because even though one problem was out of the house, there was still another. But now my life is not a part of his anymore. Now I'm a lot better, and just recently I had a great, socially distanced Thanksgiving with my friends and my grandmother. And I hope in the future I will continue to have good Thanksgivings. I mean, that has to be one of the most mental stories I've ever read. I was shocked by the kid at first, but I guess kids can be horrible like that. Yes, this guy is a bully and whatever, and smacking you over the head with a chair is a bit mad. But you know, I've seen kids in the past do that. What I've not really seen is parents like this, including your own parents, just accepting it. Like, yeah, he's a kid, he smashed you with a wooden chair. Why does it matter? Like, why aren't you just dealing with it? What sort of reaction is that? I just don't understand. Why aren't Tyrant's parents having a go at him, telling him off? taking him home rather than you being the one taken home by your own father who's telling you should have done a better job and not got hit by a chair. Like, it's mad. Honestly, the kid is something. Yes, he is entitled, but the parents around that table, Jesus. I mean, first of all, having you locked in a room is bad enough. Then, when you get smashed by a chair saying it was pretty much your fault, does it get much worse than that? I don't think so. Am I the butthole for not telling a vegan mum that the candy she stole from my kids and was eating wasn't vegan? This happened on Halloween and the day following. My neighbour, a 38-year-old woman, super vegan, has 2 kids. I, a 26-year-old, also have 2 kids. My apartment complex didn't do traditional trick-or-treating on Halloween. Residents were advised to set out pre-packaged individual candy bags on their patios/front door areas if they wanted to participate, but the traditional knock-on-door, physically hand strangers candy was not permitted. So Halloween comes and the kids are all dressed up, and each building has a scheduled time where the kids go door to door. I ended up having to work late, so my neighbour offered to walk my kids around with hers at our building's scheduled time. About 45 minutes later, my kids came home with a small bucket of candy, 6 little goodie bags each from individual apartments that participated. Everything was fine, and my kids didn't say anything weird had happened. They were just excited to eat candy once they got home. The next day, I took my kids to the park directly across from our apartment complex. My neighbour was there with her kids as well. The kids were playing, and she took out one of those individual goodie bags with candy in it from her purse and started to loudly rummage in it. She ate several pieces of candy, and my daughter eventually noticed, ran up, and asked if she could have a piece. And my neighbour responded, "Nope, this is my tax candy. Remember that this was my reward for taking you trick-or-treating last night." I was a little weirded out by that statement and asked what she meant. She said that since she was the one who had to take the kids out, she took 5 bags from each of my kids as a tax. Her son then chimes in and said, "You only took 2 bags from us." She responded with, "But I'm your mum. I was doing OP a favour so they get a higher candy tax." I was thinking about how to respond when I noticed that she was holding a Starburst candy and decided to just smile and nod and go back to watching my kids. I let her continue to finish off the bag of candy and then said, "Hey, aren't you vegan? You know, a lot of those candies are made with animal products, right?" I explained to her what gelatin was and how a lot of those candies are made with it. She was horrified, Googles it, and then told her kids that they were leaving. She said something about how she was going to be sick and stormed off. Now she's giving me dirty looks every time we see her and won't let her kids play if she shows up at the park and we are there. My husband thinks I'm a butthole because I should have either not said anything about the gelatin or said something right away when I noticed. I don't think it's my job to tell a vegan what is and isn't vegan though, and she deserved it for stealing candy from little kids. Yeah, I definitely agree with OP here. I mean, if this woman hadn't admitted to blatantly stealing the candy from your kids, then yes, you probably would have said, "Oh, by the way, before you eat any more, you do realize that gelatin is contained within a lot of candies and it is not vegan." But no, she's stolen 5 bags from each of your kids of candy on Halloween. What sort of a loser do you have to be to do that? I wouldn't tell her, but I get what your husband is saying, right? You went one step further. You told her after she'd already eaten, which is quite funny, but I think I would have done the same in that situation. What she did was just weird. Why would you steal candy from kids? You weird mother. Now moving on to our second post. Am I the butthole for deciding I won't give any Christmas gifts this year after my mum cancelled a transaction on my card? I'm still angry over this, and I may not write well, and also I probably don't judge the situation very well being this angry, so I came to this subreddit. I'm a student. I have a student bank account where my college gives me money for transport when we had physical classes or scholarship. These kind of bank accounts have no fees, but are age restricted. We can't have one if you're over 25, and need an overseer. When I asked the bank about it, they told me it's just a security thing, so I chose my mum because she's more tech savvy than dad. Well, through some incredible luck, I managed to get only top grades last year, so I was awarded a study scholarship. Great! I've been saving it up, looking forward to worldwide Black Friday, eyeing an amazing drawing tablet. I do digital art on very old intros. The tablet I was eyeing is as big as my monitor. It's a display one and just all around amazing. Black Friday rolls in, and Amazon Germany, the closest to me, has it in stock at an amazing price. A price I could afford. I was so dang happy. I ordered it. Then I got a notice that the bank refused the card. I emailed Amazon, their customer service is so fast, and we went over the card details and such, making sure it was okay. It was, and they advised me to call my bank. It was odd. I had bought things online in the past with this card and it had gone through. I had enough money for it, even extra, so I thought maybe they had technical difficulties. But it was too late in the day to call and they don't work weekends, so I left an email. Only to find out today that for big transactions, they asked for agreements from the overseer and that mine cancelled the transfer. I was like, what the F? And confronted my mum about it, who throughout the weekend acted oblivious. And she told me that of course she couldn't let me throw away money on something I don't need. And that I wouldn't have money for Christmas presents if I bought that. Then she had the audacity to ask me what I was planning to get my family this year. I told her that they won't get anything more than a bread shadow for me, and I went to my room and cried on the carpet. A bread shadow, by the way, in German apparently, is an expression for nothing. Okay, interesting. I missed out on the offer. I can't afford the tablet anymore, and it's all because mum wanted Christmas gifts. And no, I won't get her anything. Last year, she got me a blouse too small for me that she later took for herself. She can gift herself this year too. Yeah, that seems like a load of rubbish. I mean, having an overseer, I guess, makes a lot of sense. But when your overseer is your own parent who then just stops all your transactions going through, doesn't that kind of defeat the point? I mean, it's your bank account. You can kind of spend money on what you want to spend money on. And by the way, your mum's saying this is a bad purchase. It's not a bad purchase. Maybe it's expensive, sure. But if you're interested in it, if it's your passion, then that's not a bad purchase at all. I don't know what gives her the right to, tell you what a good and bad purchase is if it's something that you love doing. But yeah, it's not her bank account. She shouldn't even be involved. I mean, really, she could have at the very least talked to you before she cancelled the transaction and spoke to you about what you were buying, not acted oblivious over the course of the weekend in the knowledge that you're probably speaking to her about it saying, oh, there might be an issue with my bank, I tried to buy something, it didn't go through. Like, that is just so shady and unnecessary. What a strange woman, once again. Now moving on to our next post. Am I the butthole for giving my deceased son's college fund to his best friend instead of my nephew? This has been causing a conflict with my entire family, and they think that I'm being selfish and unreasonable. Let me explain first. I, a 39-year-old male, lost my son in 2019 due to a chronic heart condition. He was 15 years old. It was devastating and I just couldn't take it, especially when my family did little to nothing to support me during these difficult times. They didn't bring my son meals when he was at the hospital. They didn't let me go home and rest even for a few hours. They didn't take care of other things while I had a lot to deal with. I just wasn't offered any help, just words, and they just talk but do nothing. Despite the struggle, I created an account for my son's college fund, and I kept putting whatever I could get at the time in, and me and my son would talk about that a lot. He was depressed, but always believed that he was going to get better and continue his education and attend college. I started saving money to keep him motivated and to make him feel like he could be like any other kid with hopes for a good future. He had a very close friend that's about the same age as him. They were friends for 5 years, and I cannot express how his presence in my son's life helped him through the worst days. Sometimes his friend would spend the night with us and try to get my son to do activities and lighten up his mood all the time. To be frank, his friend was closer to him than his own family. He never stopped visiting and asking how I'm doing after my son's death. He'd show me handmade projects he made for my son, and as a way to remember him, we'd sometimes just sit and talk together or cry together. Last week, while I was with my family, my sister asked me what I was going to do with my son's college money. I didn't want to mention this, but since she asked, I told her that I will be giving the money to my son's friend. She barely even recognized his friend and was confused and said that my nephew deserves this money since he's family. My mum agreed that I wasn't thinking straight and that I should help the people close to me, family, and that my nephew has a right to go to college, and I was wrong for giving this opportunity away to somebody else. I didn't know what to say. They kept pointing out that I was making a mistake and how my nephew will resent me if he finds out. The thing is, my nephew wasn't close to my son. I don't even know why he'd be bothered. My sister went on and on about not being able to afford my nephew's college. I told her this was my decision and I felt more comfortable that way. She started lashing out, constantly texting me, constantly wanting to talk to me, and we ended up arguing. When I snapped, she had my mum calling me, basically guilt-tripping me and telling me I'm wrong and that I needed to think about this. It's just too much pressure, and I'm feeling lost and unable to figure out how to deal with this. Yeah, dude, I would just say that you can deal with it exactly how you want to. I mean, if you don't want to give it to your nephew and you would rather give it to your son's friend who, you know, was very close and actually cared about your dying son when he was in hospital, then yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. There's no reason to give it to one of your family members just because they are a family member if they don't even know who your son really was, it seems like. So yeah, right now, given that your son has passed, the money is yours. You can do exactly what you want, and to be honest, I think it's a much better decision to give it to someone who actually cared about your son. Oh, by the way, I've forgotten to say throughout all these stories, I don't think any of these people have been the butthole across story 1, 2, and 3. Guys, let me know down below if you disagree with me. I'm pretty sure these were all pretty clear-cut cases. No buttholes were present in today's video. Maybe next time, but I'm not so sure. Entitled parents don't believe I'm that sick. I almost die. This was back in 2018, and I was seriously sick, so a lot of it is blurry, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So in about July of 2018, I started to get pretty sick. At first, it was kind of like a cold. I had a sore throat, runny nose, fever, etc. So I did what anyone would do and brought some cold and flu tablets to help me get better faster. When they didn't work, I took them for the recommended time. I decided it was time to go to the doctor. I was told by the first doctor I saw that it might be tonsillitis, so she prescribed me some antibiotics and that was it. For a few days I was okay. I couldn't drink much because my throat was swollen, I couldn't eat a lot, and I couldn't sleep because every time I did, I'd choke. But I was fine until that Saturday morning. Now, I worked the Saturday shift, and as soon as I was up and getting ready, I knew something was wrong. My lips were severely chapped, and it looked like I had been punched in the face. I had ulcers that had formed on the tip of my tongue that went all the way down my throat, and my face was swollen. Now, OP has actually attached some pictures in the hospital for reference. I'll have a look at them right now. Oh, and there, yeah, you can see, look, I mean, it looks pretty normal apart from a very swollen jaw. And her lips are, yeah, I don't even know what would possibly cause that apart from biting, but obviously it isn't that. They look in a very bad way. I told my lovely mother and father that I wasn't well. They, of course, didn't believe me. This is the conversation that followed when we were talking about me going to work. I just don't think I should go. My father said, "You're fine," ignoring the fact that I'm almost falling over my own feet because of dizzy spells. My mother agreed, "You're going to work." So I went. Now, I don't remember what happened, because at this point I started to black out because of the dehydration, but I do remember seeing my manager and, at the time, partner at work. He mentioned something about me looking terrible, and my father, being the ever-ready person to be a victim and hero, said he agreed. My manager said to me, "You should go home." I had a scarf around my face because I was so cold that it was hurting me. What's with the scarf? I removed it, and that was it. He sent me home, told me that I was not to come back until I was 100% well. Now, I don't remember the rest of that day, but I do vividly remember parts of Sunday. Sunday was my second doctor's visit, but this time I had to see a different doctor at a different clinic. My mother had just had surgery on her wrist and she couldn't drive, and I wasn't allowed, so I woke up my father. Now, there was a lot of shouting and swearing directed at me because God forbid he's up at 9 AM. So, we go to this new doctor and he says it's fungal. I don't know what he thought it was, because at this point I was hitting that part of time where the human body starts to shut down slowly because of dehydration. So I'm in different meds, which made me worse. I was vomiting and I couldn't drink because of the ulcers. You get it. Monday night rolls around and I bring up going to the hospital. I was extremely fatigued, dehydrated, and I was starving. I was also hallucinating people that weren't there. It was a great time. My mother, though, said, "No, you're not going. What you need is a shower and you'll be better." My father says, "I'll frickin' take you to the hospital and just frickin' leave you outside the ER then." My mother then took me to shower where I was bawling my eyes out because I was just done. I didn't want to be sick anymore and I was extremely tired. When I got out, my mother told me to get my meds, phone, and its charger, just in case, and they'd take me to the hospital. I don't remember the 15-minute drive there, but I do remember staring at the streetlights, thinking they were stars following us. So I was in the ER, and the nurse, honestly my lifesaver, took one look at my face, complexion, and called a wheelchair to collect me. We didn't have to wait to be admitted. I was put in IV, and I drained 3 bags in a few hours. They then gave me this stuff that numbed my throat, and I was given a Zupa Duper. Not sure what they'd be called in America, but they're a frozen cordial stick that are delicious. I was in the hospital, in not only AMW, acute medical wing, for 3 days, but also the ER private rooms for 1 day. That whole time I didn't see my father, but I did see my mother for 10 minutes while my entitled sister and her kids were also there causing trouble for my hospital roommates. It turned out I had mononucleosis, no idea how I got it, and if I waited like my parents wanted, I would have died. Alright, let me put that picture up on screen again. Now tell me guys, if you were a parent of this child and you saw her lips in this condition, what would your reaction be? It certainly wouldn't be, yeah, go and take a shower and have some rest, you'll be alright. I mean, I don't know what is happening to her lips there. I don't know what mononucleosis is. I might actually look it up. But if I saw that, I'd be like, no, you need to go to hospital right now. That looks mad. Unless this person was literally biting at their lips, but they obviously weren't. Get to hospital immediately. What are your parents doing? Genuinely, yes. They could have honestly caused your death here by being so ignorant. What the heck? Oh, okay, I didn't realize. I've just looked it up now. I didn't realize it's the same as glandular fever. Obviously, a very serious illness you can get. And if untreated, you probably can die. So, parents of OP, please take note. Don't do this again. Just better to be safe than sorry in this situation, surely. Now moving on to our second story. Entitled driver wrecks his brand new Dodge Charger, injures, and then blames me, a pedestrian, for his wreck. For some backstory, I work for a subcontracting company that does really niche IT work for various municipal governments, and my truck is loaded with equipment for computer repair and road work. Like I said, it's niche, but this becomes important later. As such, I currently have a 2-hour commute, and while I do use the interstate during the day, I usually head home closer to midnight and prefer to take state highways and back roads due to the lower speed limits. Now onto the story. So as Renee, my fiance and co-worker, and I were driving home tonight, we had noticed that a large rotted poplar tree had become uprooted and fallen into the road, covering both lanes. Normally, I would have called local officials and then either waited for the tree to be removed or simply wait for them to arrive and then take a different route. Unfortunately though, I had no cell reception in this area, and rerouting would have added an extra hour to my already long commute. As such, I figured I'd try to use my demolition hammer, the best thing available to me, to try and at least weaken it until someone came by with cell reception that we could flag down and get to call local authorities. So, I turned on our hazards, turned on our beacon, and Renee and I both put on our reflective vests and hard hats with built-in lamps. While Renee brought the tools over to the tree, I began grabbing the traffic cones to block off the road. Enter Brad. As I finished setting up the cones behind the truck, Renee began handing me the cones to put in front of the fallen tree. No sooner had I begun reaching for them when we heard the roar of a brand new sunrise orange Dodge Charger RT flying up the back road with a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit at highway speeds. I ran in front of the fallen tree, shining my flashlight on the already well-illuminated tree, and I tried to flag down the Charger. It was no use. He never even hit his brakes. I dove out of the way at the last second as the Charger ploughed into the tree, turning it into a horizontal fulcrum and me into a baseball as the tree struck my shoulder and launched me about 10 feet. I got up, extreme pain throughout my left side, and I was unable to raise my arm. Adrenaline was coursing through me. I ran, hobbled quickly to the remains of the poor, obliterated Charger, now smoking and leaking fluids all over the road. Miraculously, Brad and his nice girlfriend, both about my age, early 20s, got out and were completely unharmed, though understandably shaken. Renee, who miraculously found the one spot with coverage, called emergency services, and the nice girlfriend called Chad, Brad's nice dad, and that's when I heard it. Oh God, my car! How could this happen? Why does this always happen to me? What? And that was when Brad looked at me, looked at the clearly uprooted tree, and proceeded to have a unique reaction. One that I never thought really ever happened. One that sounded like... At this point, I think maybe he's injured too, and I say, dude, are you okay? No, idiot. Because of you, my car is completely totaled. What kind of moron cuts down a tree in the middle of the road? Actually, the tree was already here. We only got here maybe 2 or 3... BS! You blinded me with that flashing strobe light. He was pointing at the yellow hazard beacon on my truck, which I've used for years. His nice girlfriend then says, actually, I think that... But Brad interrupts. Shut up, all of you. I'm going to sue you for failing to illuminate the tree properly. This is irrelevant. At this point, I'm still trying to be nice. Well, actually, that's... If you open your mouth one more time, I'm gonna... Then Renee, in all of her 4.5-foot glory, said, enough. It's not his fault that you clearly acquired your driver's license in a Happy Meal. That tree is very well illuminated. You clearly weren't paying any attention, and you hurt him. Look at him. He's limping, idiot. You're the one who ought to be apologizing for that stunt you pulled and the mess you made. Then there was silence. Deathly, unnerving silence, as Brad stood slack-jawed and making a strange choral noise. Suddenly, Brad goes on an absolute rampage, kicking and throwing my cones, tools, and various other items from and around my truck into the forest and off the road's 15-foot embankment. I wish I could tell you more, but it was about that time that Brad's dad, Chad, arrived along with first responders. We gave statements, and I spent the rest of the time being checked out by EMS. I'll update you guys tomorrow after his insurance company calls me. Yeah, I just don't really understand how this can possibly be OP's fault in this situation. Like, he's just had a crash himself, or was it a crash, or he saw a tree that's been uprooted? Okay, fine. Not a crash, but he's seen a tree that's been uprooted, done their very best, him and Renee, to, try and at least salvage the situation and to cause as few accidents as possible. They've even, shone a torch at the driver who was going way too fast on a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit road, and they've just plowed into the tree. What are you supposed to do about that? OP's been injured in this situation. Clearly, he was trying to help. He wasn't just, saw the tree and was like, oh, we'll leave that, let someone else crash into it. You're trying to help. I don't understand how the insurance could possibly, claim anything for Brad in this situation. If anything, you need some police to try and sort out what really happened here, because if Brad presses charges, you might be in trouble. I don't know. I hope not, because that's clearly a ludicrous thing to happen in this situation when you actually try to help. But I don't know. The police don't know what happened. It could just be Brad's word against yours. I hope, OP, you kind of get some help so that this situation is cleared up and you don't get in the trouble that you obviously don't deserve to be in. I mean, I've just reread it, right? He's ran in front of a fallen tree, OP, shining his flashlight on the already well-lit tree, and then trying to flag down a charger that is going way above the speed limit. Who's in the wrong here, and who's the real hero? Let's be honest. OP, you're a legend. Brad, you are a Chad. I'm not gonna lie. I called the mayor useless in front of his daughter. So, in my country, there are some upcoming parliament elections, and one man who owns a big printing and marketing company, whom I've known for a long time, calls me and says he wants me to start working on video editing, and my first job in there would be to help on the campaign for a certain candidate. To be clear, I hate politics, and I have some big personal issues with that political party, which single-handedly destroyed the whole country. But I'm a female dog, and I need that work and that money, so I accepted. I've started working there, and the work was good. I have been giving my best. I've met the candidate, a young lady, and also an 18-year-old who was her personal photographer. One day, after 1.5 weeks of working in there, me, my boss's wife, and the young photographer were in the office. We were watching some material to start making a video with. Suddenly, they start complaining about some people close to the mayor of the city for being useless. And I say, it's known that those people are useless. Anyone related to that mayor is useless, including the mayor himself. My boss and his wife are looking at me with big eyes with their mouths shut, but their faces say, "Oh, you don't dare." I say, what's happened? And then my boss says, "She is the mayor's daughter." I was shocked for a second and then started laughing, and they all started laughing at me. I apologized and pat this girl's head, but she had that "I'll kill you" face on. Nothing happened, and we didn't talk about it again, except for like 3 weeks later when I was making a video about a reopening for a rehabbed hospital, which was hosted by the mayor, and this girl says to me, "You see, my dad is not useless." So those guys don't know English or know what Reddit is, but I really don't like that mayor. We all know he's there because of his connections with high corrupt figures in the main government, so I'm glad I wasn't fired, but I have no regrets. I honestly feel like this story is more of a "today I effed up," but still pretty good stuff, and I guess it does technically fit into this subreddit. Just a weird one that you'd pat her head afterwards. I'm not really sure why you'd do that. Surely you'd be embarrassed and you'd apologize to her rather than patting her on the head. But anyway, yeah, pretty funny story, I guess. Guys, let me know down below in the comments, have you ever been in a situation where you've been talking to somebody about someone else that you dislike, not realizing that the person you're talking to is related to the person that you're talking about? That must be extremely embarrassing. I think OP honestly handled it pretty well just by laughing, admitting his mistake and being like, oh well, I'm sorry I said it, but I guess it's funny. Now moving on to our next post. Be nice to everyone, they might just own the place. For some backstory, I own a portfolio of 5 different businesses that have little in common with each other. They are all service-based, and 3 of them are public-facing and in different areas of the state in which I live. Given that the businesses all operate under separate names, provide separate services, and are located in separate offices, buildings, etc., I tend to allow the managers for each location to hire clerical staff without me meeting them first. This largely works out to everyone's benefit, as I don't have to drive several hours to approve a new receptionist, and it doesn't take time away from my staff or the new hire. One of my businesses happens to be involved with medical testing and is farthest from my home at about 3 hours away, so I only make trips out there if I have to. Shortly before COVID hit, I drove out to the medical testing office to pick up some papers and to meet the new receptionist that had been hired a few days prior. I asked the manager in charge of that office to send me the new hire's name and some background info so I could introduce myself without not knowing anything about them. I pulled up to the office at around 5:45 and walked up to the check-in counter where the new receptionist was sitting. Before I could say anything, let alone introduce myself, she says, "We're about to close, so you need to come back later." I thought she was joking, and I kind of chuckled and waited for the new receptionist to laugh too. But the receptionist said, "Aren't you a crackhead or something? I said we're closed." While I try to keep in mind that I don't know what is going on in someone's life to cause them to be in a bad mood, I also don't want this new receptionist or any of my staff to speak to anyone in that manner. This is the conversation between the new receptionist and I that followed. "Do you speak to customers that way?" "Yeah, when you people come in late like you own the place." "I do." "You do what?" "I own this place." "Okay." Then I show her the badge that states I'm the owner. "I'd like to see you in my office now." The new receptionist's eyes got very wide as she watched me swipe my badge, thus unlocking the door that leads from the lobby to the staff area. I passed the manager's office and told her to follow me to my office, which she did. The manager, the new receptionist, and I sat down in my office and I explained the situation to the manager. I then explained to the receptionist that our office gets people from all walks of life and in all types of situations, and that I don't tolerate any of my staff speaking to people in such a manner when they are representing my business. I asked the manager to draft termination papers while I had a final check made out to the new receptionist. When we settled all the formalities of firing her, I handed her the check, which she grabbed out of my hand and tried to storm out of the building. However, by the time we finished, it was past 6 PM, which is when the office closes and the front door automatically locks and requires an employee badge to unlock. As such, when the new receptionist tried to open the door, it was locked, and when she tried to swipe her badge, the little red light just blinked because her badge was no longer active. The manager ended up having to swipe her badge to let the new receptionist out, to which the receptionist mumbled thanks and left. shocked. I'm not gonna lie guys, when I was just reading this story, I thought to myself, when the manager fired the new receptionist just like that, I was like, that seems a little bit harsh, doesn't it? Can't you just say, don't speak to people like that again? But then I've just thought about it now, and if a receptionist, who is your first impression of, meeting the company when you walk through that office door, is speaking to random customers like that sets such a bad precedent, such a bad first impression for that company, that yeah, I completely agree with OP. I would fire her on the spot as well after a little bit of thinking. You just don't want to give that first impression off to new customers, potential new customers. What a horrible person. I mean, who would even speak to that day to day, just outside of your job, to a normal person you haven't met before? It's just not a nice thing to do, is it? Yeah, I completely agree with OP. If you are the sort of person that treats people like that, I don't want you working for my company. Simple as that. Now moving on to our third story, I just want to clock in. I'm out of work because of COVID, so occasionally I drive my husband to and from work, because he has a long commute, and at least once in a while I can do the driving for him. Now, he works at a warehouse-type shopping centre. Between 9 to 10 AM, Monday to Friday, they have senior shopping. His shift started at 9:45. I had some shopping to do, so we walked in together. I went to grab a cart and go to the back of the line of regular shoppers, waiting for the senior hour to finish up and be let in. My husband kisses my cheek and walks into the building. Now, we're in our 30s, definitely not close to the 55 plus. The lady at the front of the line starts shrieking that man was just allowed in to shop and didn't wait in line like the rest of us. I stopped mid-cart grab and watched it unfold. My husband turns around and politely explains, while holding up his badge, sorry mom, I work here, I'm just showing up for my shift, is all. I'm not cutting the line, I promise. But she loses it. She demands to speak to a manager since people are being allowed to cut in line in front of her, and how she's been waiting for over an hour to get in. The doors didn't even open until 9 AM, and there are signs everywhere explaining that 9 to 10 is senior hour, and it has been this way for months. My husband continues to try and calm the lady down, explaining that he is an employee. His shift starts in 3 minutes, he's not cutting in line, he's clocking in for his shift. The person watching the door keeps explaining the same. Finally, a manager comes to the front. Karen is now blue in the face from yelling and screaming. It's time for my husband to clock in, and he can't get past the front because Karen keeps screaming. The manager explains that my husband is, indeed, there to work and get everything ready for the incoming flood of patrons. But Karen was having none of it. My husband finally decides that in order to just end the situation, he'd use the back entrance, at the complete opposite side of the giant building. His manager and my husband share a very knowing look. The manager apologizes to Karen, who now looks incredibly righteous. The manager says he'll have a talk to the employee at the front door. There's some whispering, my husband's co-worker smiles a little. It's now 10 AM, and the doors are supposed to be open to everyone. Karen starts looking very, very impatient as the manager, now standing at the door, tells her he can't let the general public in until there are 2 people at the door. We wait, and wait, and wait, and wait. And about 5 minutes after 10, my husband walks up from inside the building to the door and calls Karen on into the building, apologizing for being late as he was being held up. The laughs from the people in line behind her were just precious. She went from blue in the face, screaming, to red and embarrassed. Yeah, to be honest guys, I just don't understand this Karen one bit at all. Even if this person wasn't who they said they were, would it really matter if just one person was cutting in line in front of you? In that situation, surely just let them go. They're saying to you, right, I'm an employee, I work here. Even if you have 95% of doubt that they're just not even telling the truth, but why does it matter? Just let them go. In the worst case scenario, it's one person in front of you. In the best case scenario, you're not holding up someone who needs to do their job and ultimately is about to serve you in 5 minutes when the store opens to the general public. I just don't get it. Just let them go. What's the big deal here? To be fair though, it would be weird for someone to make up a lie about being an employee there right in front of the staff's face as well who were on the door. Surely they would just say, no, you don't work here if the person was lying, or they'd let them in if they were an employee. I don't know, it just seems very, very strange logic once again from this Karen. Now moving on to our final post, just a quick one. Too old to work in a place like this? Several years ago, I was the manager in a trendy independent clothing boutique that catered to teenagers and college students. I had a couple of girls, probably in the 18 to 20-year-old range, come in with their mother. I was working register that day, so when they asked for help, our owner started helping them select items and take them into the dressing room. When they finally got up to the checkout, the mother said to me, "You should fire that lady. She's way too old to be working in a hip place like this." The old lady was standing a few feet away and walked up to the woman and said, "I don't just work in this place, I own this place, and I designed most of the clothes you just bought. And considering I've owned it for 40 years and it's made me a millionaire, you can kiss my butt. Now get out of my store and don't come back." She was a sassy old lady and I loved her to death. It broke my heart when she died a few years later. Oh, now this story is just amazing. Not only does she own the store, but she's also designed all the clothes that this woman has just probably spent a lot of money on that's made the owner a very rich lady. I mean, incredible stuff, really. Imagine her going through the shop like, "Oh, tell you what, girls, this is a lovely piece of clothing right here. I can't imagine who designed it. Probably a young, hip, trendy person, a trendy fashion designer." Then she comes across this old woman who owns a store and is like, "What? You're way too old and frankly ugly to be working here," not knowing that she has designed all the clothes she's about to buy. Incredible scenes of glorious emotion. Long live the king. I don't know why I've said that, but screw it. Let's go to the outro. What the? Makes absolutely no sense. Woman, do not touch my child. A few hours ago, Auntie, my family says that instead of Auntie, called my mother about something that happened today. Her peed off black woman voice could be heard across the room. I was curious what happened, worried something bad happened, as I've never heard her so angry, and I asked my mum to put her on speakerphone. The following story she told us is parallel to a situation my mother and I went through when I was very young. Here's how it began. Early this afternoon, my auntie, aged 52, and her daughter, aged 9, went to the store to pick up baking supplies for my cousin to make her first gingerbread house. My cousin had always wanted to make one and was inspired when I shared photos of the holiday goodies I made. I told her it's more fun to make food from scratch, and they just taste better, and she wanted to give it a try. That was their plan for this weekend. My cousin and auntie went to Dollar Tree for candy, since they could get way more for way less than their local grocery for the good brand name stuff. They had most of the ingredients at home, so they didn't need much. Being the holiday season, they were in the grocery line for quite a while. My cousin bounced with excitement, saying how she couldn't wait to get started on the gingerbread house and make it so cute. There was a white woman in line behind them. Auntie assumed she was 40-something, whose outfit said she could buy anything at full price and still afford her bills for the month. She said, with a big smile, "Your daughter has such pretty hair." One thing about the women in my family, we all have great hair because we take care of it. It's thick, healthy and beautiful, and we take pride in it. We all stopped using relaxers before my cousin was even born, so it was 100% pure African American hair. It is a lot of work, but the payoff is worth it. My cousin loves getting her hair styled. Today's style was 2 twists over her head like a headband, butterfly clips, and matching bubble balls around 4 separate, evenly parted twists with flower barrettes on the end. It was windy where they live, so my auntie also gelled her hair down. My auntie thanked the woman for the compliments. My cousin was shy around strangers and inched forward, feeling uneasy as the woman was not on the 6-foot marker on the floor separating them. While my aunties started loading their things onto the conveyor belt, she noticed one of my cousin's flower barrettes fell off, and one of her little twists came loose. Auntie told her to pick it up. She has bad knees, as not to lose it. My cousin bent down to get it, and as soon as she stood up, the woman behind grabs her and starts touching her hair. This total stranger put her hands on another stranger's child, especially a black woman's child. Yeah, her obituary would be in the works if it were my kid. When Auntie saw her, she hollered, "Female dog, get your freaking hands off my child!" The woman stared at her wide-eyed, but didn't stop. "She's fine. Her hair is just so pretty. I couldn't resist the urge to touch it." My auntie starts taking her earrings off. It wasn't her first fight. She said, "Lady, I do not know you, and I am not above resisting the urge to touch you." She snatched the woman's hand away and threw it aside as it smacked into the conveyor belts. The woman cried out in pain while clutching her hands and yells, "What the heck is wrong with you?" Auntie tells her, "You don't put your hands on someone else's child. If I did that to your kid, you'd have my black butt arrested." The woman looks at my cousin, who is on the verge of tears, and says, "I bet your mean mummy beats you at home, doesn't she? You're probably being abused. I can take you away from that pain, baby." My cousin began to step back from the woman, smelling the crazy on her, and this broad quickly grabs her arm by force. My cousin shrieks, and my auntie backhands the woman clean across the face. The woman just gasped and stared at my auntie like she was crazy. To auntie's credit, she was the right kind of crazy, the kind you don't F with when it comes to her carbs. Auntie didn't know if someone called a manager or security or if they were already coming, but they did, and the two security men restrained auntie. Now, she is no small lady. The woman immediately started sobbing and told them, "Arrest this psycho. She assaulted me when all I did was say her daughter's hair was pretty." But auntie said, "You put your hands on my baby. You're lucky I'm not whooping your butt up and down these aisles." The cashier and some onlookers vouched for her, saying she didn't know the woman who just started touching cousin's hair for no reason. The manager told one of the security guards to stay with the woman, while he, auntie, and the other guard went to his office. My auntie told them everything that happened before they checked the CCTV. Everything from the woman touching cousin's hair to my auntie slapping the taste out of her mouth when she tried to grab cousin by force. Everything my auntie told them was caught on video. The manager asked my cousin if she was okay, and she said yes. She was just scared for the other woman because she thought her mum was going to, and I quote, "beat the white off that woman and curb stomp her." This made the security guy laugh. He was a black man with a daughter himself and agreed that his wife probably would have done the same thing. They went back to the woman and told her that my auntie was indeed acting out of self-defense for her child. The manager told her that because she grabbed the little girl by force, she was on the hook for first-degree kidnapping charges. This is when the woman started fuming and shouted, "It's not my fault this skin pigment-related slur is a horrible mother." Oh, for God's sake. And there it was, the infamous word that ended Paula Deen's career and made Dave Chappelle a household name. The manager, the security guards, the onlookers, auntie saw a lot of drop jaws and heard a lot of shocked gasps. The woman realized what she said and sputtered, trying to save face. The manager promptly told her to shut up and asked my auntie if she wanted to press charges. Auntie, of course, said heck yeah. The security guard who waited with the woman slapped some lovely silver bracelets to go with her outfit and escorted her out of the store. She was charged for the attempted kidnapping and banned from the store for the hate speech. Edit to add, I found out from my auntie that half the people there were black, including the manager. Some people clapped as the woman was escorted out. My auntie's $40 purchase was comped and they went home. No matter how sweet my cousin makes her gingerbread house, I'm sure the justice she and my auntie got today was even sweeter. Alright, so let's be honest, a lot happened in that story. I need to just go through it again and quickly unpack it in my own mind before giving my, concluding thoughts. Alright, now first of all, touching black people's hair because it's cool. It's not really on. Let's be realistic. I've heard a lot about it, on social media and the news, to be fair, recently, in the past few years. Yeah, just think about it. If it was the other way around and it was black people touching white people's hair, you'd say, it's really not, it's a bit weird, isn't it? So it works both ways. You can't have it, you can't just say, it's allowed for white people to touch black people's hair and then it's weird the other way around. It's just weird to go into somebody else's personal space, touch their hair without asking. That's the first stage. The second stage is she then grabs your daughter's arm. Your auntie's daughter's arm. That's mad. I didn't know that could be charged with kidnapping, but I guess if you do grab the arm of a child, stopping them from moving, I guess in a way that is kidnapping, so I guess that charge is kind of fair. I don't really know why she then went to that length. I mean, fair enough, touching her hair is pretty bad, but after the mum said, don't do that, you should have just said, okay, fair enough, I won't do that again. My apologies, just wanted to touch her hair, even though it's a bad thing. This woman from the very beginning of the story was just very clearly in the wrong. She was within the 6 feet boundary, the 2 meter boundary that you've got to be outside of in these COVID times. And then it just got worse and worse from there. And yeah, she did deserve to get kicked out the store and arrested. Good stuff. Now moving on to our next story. Entitled lady demands to adopt my cat. For some backstory, I recently started fostering cats to help me get over some personal issues. I own 2 cats, Maggie and Milo. At the moment, I have 4 cats I'm fostering. I was contacted about a potential adopter, and we scheduled a time yesterday for her to come meet Billy Bug, one of the fosters. Well, the woman comes, and she seems normal enough. No Karen haircut, and she's planning to adopt the cat as a birthday present for her 12-year-old daughter. So the meeting goes pretty well. I introduce her to Billy Bug, who is the chillest cat on the planet. He's mostly white with a black face and paws. As I'm telling her about him, she notices Maggie chilling in the cat tree. Of course, I let the cats roam wherever they want, and she asks about her. I explain she's my baby. I adopted her and her brother after they were abandoned on the side of a road. Maggie is a gorgeous cat. She's black and white, pretty small, and is the fluffiest cat in my place. She's also the only female cat in my place. All my other fosters are boys. So Karen asked if she could adopt Maggie instead of Billy Bug, and I had to stop myself from laughing. I told her Maggie was not up for adoption. She got mad and told me I work for a shelter, I can't just keep the best cats for myself. I told her that I had Maggie for a year before I started fostering, and obviously I'm not letting anyone adopt my pets. So, Karen tells me she's going to report me to the shelter. This shelter needs foster families in order to save more animals. It's a no-kill shelter, and foster families allow them to take in more animals that would have ended up euthanized. I asked her to leave. She told me she wasn't leaving without a cat, and stormed over to the cat tree and picked up my Maggie. Quick note about Maggie, she only likes to be picked up on her terms, which is almost never. So Karen picks her up and Maggie starts pushing against her chest with her paws. And I'm telling Karen to put her down and get out of my house. And as she tries to readjust her hold on my baby, Maggie gets fed up and uses her claws. Karen drops her and she and Billy Bug both bolt from the room. I tell Karen to leave or I'm calling the cops. She finally leaves, going on about reporting me to the shelter. As soon as she's gone, I call the shelter and tell them everything that happened and that I cannot, in good conscience, allow that woman to adopt a cat in my care. They agreed that her behaviour was troubling and have temporarily placed her on the do not adopt to list for now. She called like an hour later, complaining to the shelter about me, and lost it when she was told they wouldn't be adopting to her anytime soon. Now I'm getting ready for another foster cat to come in tomorrow, and I'm meeting a couple looking to adopt Phoebe and Dahlia, 2 of my fosters that came from the same litter. So despite the crazy Karen, things are still moving fast, and Billy Bug will find his forever home eventually. You know what, it's such a shame that some of the most selfless people in the world, like you OP, have to deal with entitled Karens in your day-to-day work. As you say, there's not much more you can be doing in life that is morally better or ethically better than adopting cats that would otherwise die, let's be realistic, and then giving them to good foster homes so they can have an amazing life. There's literally, I can't think of many better things you can do other than like working for charity and saving people's lives yourself. Coming close second to that is fostering cats and making sure they survive. I'm not gonna lie, maybe even above it. So to say that then you have to deal with people like this who are like, you know what, I don't want this ugly foster cat, I want your cat. It just goes against everything that the whole business of adopting and fostering cats is about, I'm sure. Not that I know too much about that whole world, but that's just what I'm thinking. It's just a shame that you had to deal with this woman, to be honest. And if I'm completely honest, I hope that she's never allowed to own a pet again. I wonder if there's like some anti-pet owner thing you can get given if you're just horrible to pets. There might be, I just don't like her mentality, and I feel like if she did get a pet, after 1 week she'd probably be bored and be like, oh, I want the next best thing, not this old cat. So yeah, probably best that she didn't get any cat at all. Hey, can you fix my daughter's laptop for free multiple times? A bit of backstory / personal beliefs. I'm willing to help my friends, but we all know someone who has, or have themselves, a friend who is the group mooch. The kind of person who knows you're getting together and just shows up nothing in hand and expects to be given free food, booze the entire time. Yet sadly, you put up with them till it gets to the breaking point of wanting to beat them senseless with a shovel. This story is about said friend, whom I finally got to the breaking point with. My mutual friend isn't tech savvy, like at all. He has zero respect for tech and constantly uses me as his go-to man when stuff goes sideways, almost always his doing. This is from the olden days of Windows 8, being a fresh hot mess that was the next big thing everyone hated because it took the standard Windows interface, beat it over the head with a bat, tossed the bloody corpse into a wood chipper, then proceeded to light the remaining slurry on fire with military-grade napalm. I hate Windows 8 in case you didn't pick up on that. Oh yes, I did. He had recently bought a laptop for his daughter, since she was starting to need it for school, and he wanted a mobile PC to use when he felt like it. Pretty sure he just wanted it for himself, but he needed to convince the wife to okay the expense. Instead of asking me for inputs, he decides he was just going to go to Big Blue Multi-Story and buy the cheapest laptop model that rhymes with hell, okay? It took less than a day of him fighting with it to call me and ask if I'd put Windows 7 on it, because he hated Windows 8. I asked why not return it and get a Windows 7 model, to which he responded, "Big Blue doesn't have any Windows 7, only 8, and my daughter really needs this computer." Sure, she does. I agree, and he drops it off within an hour. I should note that this happened just after Windows 8 dropped, and there was no classic shell programs out that simply said, "F off new POS tablet design, we're using the old one everyone knows and can use," so my options were limited. I did an initial look at what I was getting myself into, and lucky me, hell had only put out drivers for Windows 8 for this model. Yay! I do about 6 hours worth of hunting / downloading / tweaking drivers, and praying / cursing the tech gods as I installed Windows 7. I had to cherry pick working drivers for most of the hardware. The rest I got to work through sheer trial and error. I made a restoked disk, backed up and labeled every driver for this system in individual numbered folders in case I needed to redo anything on this POS. My friend is notorious for effing up his computer's operating system. I give him a ring and let him know it's good to go, and he picks it up the next day. Well, that sounds like a lot of work. Less than 2 weeks later, he texts me saying something's wrong with it. It won't do blah blah blah, or I can't get it to do what I want. Shocking, I know. I just restore from the disk I made and give it back the same day. Let's see how long this lasts. Almost a week later, same thing. Again, a quick restore and I give it back. This time, it took almost a whole 3 weeks till I got a text. Now I'm fuming. What the heck is he doing to this thing to F up the operating system? I finally took the time to look at the system and see what the F was going on. He had a bunch of crack games downloaded and was trying to run those, a bunch of virus / malware on it, oh, and a bunch of shady prawn sites in his browser history. I'm livid. The only reason I kept fixing this dang thing was because it was supposed to be his daughter's. I got a hold of his wife to see exactly who was really using the laptop and for what. It turns out he told her it was having issues and he was constantly trying to fix it at home, and even took it to work to mess around with it when he had time. He was a manager at a hut that sells pizza, by the way. He's one of those real hands-on managers who lets everyone know what needs to be done, then F's off into the office. So I get the evil idea of fixing things my way. My first step to fixing things my way was to make an admin account that only I had the info for and limit the other account to a limited user. When I talked to his wife, I got a good idea of what his daughter really likes as far as shows, games, etc. I then proceed to pimp this laptop out for a 10-year-old girl. My Little Pony wallpapers, about 100 on rotate, the entire My Little Pony cartoon show stored directly on the computer, Bratz, Barbie, the works. I even redid the icons to a My Little Pony theme and tweaked the user interface to be pink, purple coloured. I made sure there was a parental lock on the browsers to prevent anything prawn related from even showing up on the laptop. I installed TeamViewer and locked in my personal credentials so I could get on anytime I needed. And just for good measure, I installed a handy program called Deep Freeze. For those unfamiliar with it, it snapshots the drive as is and restores the drive to that exact image every time the power cycles. Only downside to this program is you lose anything you save on the computer when the power cycles. But that's not a problem, since I'd gotten a bulk pack of thumb drives that were multicolored and came with lanyards. I even went a step above and beyond and got a My Little Pony skin for the laptop lid in case he thought of taking it to work again. I personally delivered the laptop this time, when the wife and daughter were home. The girly, high-pitched squeals of joy that nearly ruptured my eardrums made it all worth it. She went off on a joy-induced tirade as I show her and her mum everything I did, including all the shows and games I put on just for her. I then gave her a bright pink thumb drive with purple lanyard and explained that when she wanted to play the games or save anything, the drive needed to be plugged in. I set the save path for all the games to the thumb drive and added a shortcut to the drive itself on the desktop to make sure she wouldn't lose any schoolwork she was doing. I made sure both her and her mum knew the thumb drive had to be plugged in, otherwise things wouldn't be saved. I didn't mention the parental lock I set up, or deep freeze. I wanted that to be a surprise for my friend later. Both her and her mum thanked me. I got a big hug from the daughter, who was still flying around on cloud 9, and she was begging her mum to watch My Little Pony with her before I even left. I knew it was only a matter of time till I got an angry text or call from my friend, as soon as he got a chance to use the laptop. I was waiting with gleeful anticipation. I had dropped the laptop off on Monday, and I knew he wouldn't get a chance to use it until Friday, when he got back from a trip he took. Cut to Friday night, and I get a call around 8 PM, which I ignore and let go to voicemail. I get 3 more calls every 5 to 10 minutes, which I also ignore. Then I get a bunch of texts which I ignored till about 11 PM, when I figured he had ample time to try and F with the laptop to only be shut down at every attempt. I call him up with an especially snarky attitude, acting half asleep just to annoy him. He said, "Finally, where the F have you been? I tried calling you and texting, but you never responded." "Oh, yeah, I had a long day, so I took an evening nap. What's up?" "What's up? This POS laptop is busted. That's what's up. I can't get anything to work right. I downloaded a game and tried installing it, but it says I don't have admin rights. I restarted it and the game files were gone completely, so I re-downloaded it, but it still couldn't install. It's not even letting me browse the web. I thought you fixed this. What the heck?" Calm down. I'm sure it's something simple. Let me remote in. Wait, you can do that? Yeah, I got sick of having to have it dropped off, so I installed remote software. Let's see. First thing I do is remotely restart the system. It did it again! What? The game I downloaded is gone from the desktop. Oh, yeah, I put software on the laptop that restores it to a default setting. Anything not saved on an external drive gets removed. I gave your wife and daughter a thumb drive. Didn't they tell you it was needed? No, what the heck? Why would you do a stupid thing like that? Well, I've had to fix this thing 3 times already, and I got sick of it. So I made sure anything you downloaded or tried to install would be deleted and blocked. You don't have admin rights, I do. Last time there was over a dozen viruses and malware from your games, and the games you were trying to run would barely run on this laptop, even if you had legit versions. What the F? Insert 15-minute rant I didn't pay attention to because I don't care. Well, why won't it let me browse the web then? Are you sure? Let's see. I bring up Google and start browsing standard sites. I hit a few cartoon sites I favorited for his daughter and say, everything looks fine to me. Could you be referring to the prawn sites that were in your browser history on your daughter's laptop? Yeah, I thought so. See, me being the upstanding guy I am, I turned on parental controls to keep web browsing safe for your 10-year-old daughter. The F is wrong with you? But... No buts. It took a lot of work to get this thing working for your daughter's sake, and then you use it as your personal play toy, which I had to fix 3 times? I'm done with your BS. I made it so your daughter can use her laptop when and how she needs. If you want to get your own laptop and F it up beyond repair, that's fine by me. No more freebies if you F something up being an idiot. If you think this is unfair, I'd be more than happy to let your wife know exactly what the issue with the laptop was, including screenshots of your browsing history. I don't mind helping, but you go above and beyond being a mooch a lot of times. Anything else you need help with? No. Have a great weekend. Click. Having spent over 18 years in customer service/tech support, I went a bit nuclear on him. But I'd had enough of this rubbish, reminding me all too many times the problem isn't the hardware, software, it's the meat puppet smashing their face against the keyboard and wondering why stuff doesn't work. So I simply removed that part of the equation. Amazingly enough, he didn't have any more issues with the laptop. Wonder why? Well, the only time I was gotten a hold of was by his wife, asking me to update some things and install some software the daughter needed for school, which I was more than happy to do. Oh, what a great story. I mean, let's be honest, guys. This guy is a total perv. Why are you faking needing a laptop, right? And then going on it when you know it's your daughter's and watching adult stuff on there, downloading games like crack games, not even fully paid for games, and then saying to this guy, OP, who's being so helpful to you and is one of your good friends, it sounds like, that, you know, there's just a problem with it. When you probably know full well what the problem is. You're downloading loads of rubbish. It's obviously going to cause malware and viruses. That's just like common knowledge with computers. Don't download stuff that is cracked, not paid for, or just, you know, kind of illegal. Clearly, though, OP is the massive hero of this story. I mean, OP, what you did to ruin this man's life and all of his plans about, you know, fake needing a laptop for his daughter, but really using it for his own weird stuff that he does, which isn't really that, you know, normal. Yeah, just absolutely destroyed him. And the best thing about it is, though, not only did you just ruin this man's life, you also massively helped the girl's life. Like, she was so happy when she saw what you'd done. You went the extra mile to make her laptop so personal to her and just so amazing and perfect for her everyday use, you know, playing My Pony little games or whatever, or just, you know, doing schoolwork. Pretty insane stuff. Crazy that you could have caused such a massive, you know, turn in general feeling amongst the same family. You know, the dad's fuming, the daughter and wife, they're loving it. Incredible stuff, OP. You did an amazing job. Well done. Cheat on my friend and spend all of her money? Get deported. So my friend, let's call her Coco, was really popular in high school. The type of girl that everyone wanted to be friends with, and nobody wanted to cross. Coco was known to be promiscuous, but by senior year, she seemed to have finally settled down, and was in a stable relationship with a boy. Let's call him Edgar. Edgar immigrated from Ecuador as a child, but was completely Americanized, and I don't even think he spoke Spanish that well, from what I can remember. He was the type of kid that was seen as kinda a bum to most at the school. He was nearing 20 and barely showed up to class sometimes, only to smoke behind the school and hang out with friends. I guess he was on some sort of program to get his diploma before he legally couldn't continue showing up. Regardless of this, he made my friend happy, so even if I didn't think he was Prince Charming, I tolerated him. Coco, on the other hand, was head over heels. She worked every day after school at the local grocery store, and with her hard-earned money, she spoiled the heck out of him. A new Xbox, shoes, taking him out to eat, the whole 9 yards. She kissed the ground he walked on, and I was, of course, skeptical, but again, she was happy and it wasn't my business. Things seemed cool for a while, but when poop hit the fan, it hit with ferocity. 5 months into their relationship, he cheated on her. Not only did he cheat, but the girl he cheated with was freshly 14 years old and a freshman at the same high school. Keep in mind, he's 19 and probably shouldn't even still be at the school. Now, this 14-year-old girl wasn't exactly innocent. She'd had a reputation for a while for sleeping around with older men, and she looked around 17 to 18 years old. Not to take away from the gravity of the situation, but to point out that she was a very willing participant. I just feel it's needed context. Yeah, but she's still a minor. News broke because this girl was bragging to all her friends about sleeping with Edgar, and I guess one of her friends told Coco. I was almost 100% sure that Coco was going to fight this girl. She being 17 at the time, she wouldn't have gone into the trouble she would have being an adult. To my shock, however, that's not what she did. Coco was obviously devastated. The man she's adored for almost half a year, her first real boyfriend, and the thousands she spent trying to make him happy definitely tore her to pieces inside. Instead of fighting the 14-year-old and trying to socially execute her, however, she played it smart. Here is where the nuclear revenge came in. This 14-year-old knew Edgar was with Coco, and obviously feared Coco and the social power she had at the school. It was clear that she was scared to death of even showing her face once the news broke out, expecting to have to fight Coco or having to attempt to save her social life. What went down, however, was nothing like that. Coco messaged the girl on Instagram saying pretty much this: "Hey, I know what happened between you and Edgar, and I just want you to know I'm really sorry that he took advantage of you like that. I think we should meet up and talk about it. I know it's not your fault." Coco didn't really believe this girl was preyed upon, and I'm sure she was even fuming at her, but it was important to her master plan that the girl took up the victim role. I see where this potentially could be going. They end up meeting, and Coco pretty much showers the girl in affirmation that she is a victim. Edgar is the evil Baphomet child of Satan, and that if she went to the police, that Coco and her whole friend group would stand beside her and care for her. Long story short, the decision between social suicide and a fast pass to the popular group wasn't too hard for this girl to make, and she ended up going to her guidance counsellor the same day. The guidance counsellor listened to what happened and promptly called the police, who pulled Edgar out of class and have him handcuffed outside in a public spectacle. When the ugly truth comes to light, it's worse than anyone could have imagined it. Not only did Edgar and this 14-year-old get it on, they did it in the school bathroom. His mugshot was plastered on the news and everyone was talking about it. After multiple hours of Coco gaslighting this girl and telling her all the right things to say to the police, he was charged. He ended up getting charged with statutory rape on top of another charge because it was on school grounds. He got $50,000 bail, which he wasn't able to pay, and better yet, they were deporting him to Ecuador, the place where he had no remaining family, barely spoke the language, and that's only after he served his 5-year sentence in the US. Throughout the entire trial, Coco pretty much coached the 14-year-old, telling her to say she was scared and felt pressure to do it, when in reality, it was all on her own accord and nothing new to her. She complied with everything Coco said in order to save her own social reputation. She even continued to brag about her sexual endeavours to us, but as long as it wasn't Edgar, we were happy to entertain it. We were young and dumb and living life like we were in an early 2000s teen movie. Looking back, I can tell the girl definitely had some issues with male attention. Regardless, for the rest of our senior year, Coco let the girl tag along with us and treated her really well, even bringing her to senior prom in a loophole for the LGBT students. 3 years later, the girl is seemingly doing great. I see her on social media from time to time, and she's enrolled in college for the full semester. Coco has a new boyfriend she's been living with for over a year now, and Edgar is still in prison awaiting his deportation. Looking back, I realise how messed up the whole situation was. The 14-year-old definitely had some problems in her life, and Coco was definitely manipulative. Sometimes I even feel bad for Edgar. But at the end of the day, she was still 14, so even if she was totally down with it, it's still illegal. I don't think either side was exactly doing the right thing. It's not like Coco actually cared about the 14-year-old like she pretended she did. At least the girl had a nice time for the rest of high school. Coco just wanted to scorn Edgar, and scorn him she did. Nah, you know what? Yeah, you are right. Okay, fair enough. You are right, OP. She did want to scorn Edgar. That is completely legit, but she did it completely legally. And, most importantly, she was outing a nonce. I can't say it any more than that, A 19-year-old was sleeping with a 14-year-old, that's illegal, and he should know way better. Even if the 14-year-old is entertaining it, or even if the 14-year-old is demanding it. Really, it doesn't matter. You're 19, and you're sleeping with a 14-year-old. Yes, you deserve to go to jail. Yes, you deserve to be deported. It's pretty simple. It doesn't even matter what Coco's real, reason for doing all this was. At the end of the day, a paedophile got reported for paedophilia and arrested. That can only ever be a good thing, It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter about the other stuff. It really doesn't matter at all. Yeah, there is a comment down below which I completely agree with. Another way of titling the story is Coco recognizes that her 19-year-old boyfriend has committed statutory rape and helps the victim report it to prevent him from preying on other victims, and then continues to support her afterwards. That is how I'm seeing this. The 14-year-old, doesn't matter what sort of person they are, they're 14. That's the whole point. Yeah, it's weird. The 14-year-old could do anything. They can do whatever they want. It's still fine. They're 14 and they've been, let's be realistic, they've been victimized by a 19-year-old. Weird. Really weird, but at least this guy's put away now. Great stuff.